Good afternoon. Welcome to the Moore County Board of Education work session and special called meeting for Monday, August 5th, 2019. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, there was a motion by Mr. Dennison, and the second was by, who went first? All right, Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's take a moment of silence. All right, thank you. We have a full agenda for today. Dr. Grimacy.
Yeah, Madam Chair, at this time I'll invite Dr. Metcalf and friends forward.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. We are here to provide an update on the ACT situation at Pinecrest High School. Principal Phillips is going to provide an update on the supports that are being provided to the students. And then Ms. Fall will provide an update on the accountability measures, that piece of it. And then I'll provide a quick report on the work of the ACT district fire team that's looking at the testing. And we'll start with Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board, Superintendent Grimacy, guests, and community members watching at home. Thank you for your time today. I want to start out by apologizing to the entire class of 2020, their parents and our school family, the district, and the Board of Education. The mishandling of the ACT answer sheets was a significant error, and I feel personally responsible for the stress and the anxiety that those students who are impacted have gone through as a result of this error. It did happen on my watch, and I am ultimately accountable for the successful administration of the ACT at Pinecrest High School. I am also extremely sorry for the amount of work this has cost everyone impacted by the mishandling of the ACT answer sheets. It has taken countless staff hours away from very important other needs at the school and at the district. Again, I want to apologize to the senior class for the inconvenience and stress this has caused. I will be meeting with the entire senior class on August 21st and again on the first day of school to apologize to them in person and begin the journey of rebuilding their trust and confidence in our school administration. Once again, members of the board and Superintendent Grimacy, I am sorry. The first thing I want to review with you specifically is the immediate test administration action plan. When Ms. Fall and I began the first days of the investigation, we had this action plan in place before she ever left Pinecrest. Some highlights of that plan are the testing coordinator will become a certified position. It was a classified position. There will be an assistant principal who will provide direct oversight for the entire testing process with verbal and written communication as to what that process should look like. There will be 2 testing teams, a team for logistics and a team for testing processes. I'm sure the Board of Education has learned more about ACT than they ever knew before, and logistics is a huge part of that administration at Pinecrest High School because we use arena testing, and you're putting desks in a gym with specific guidelines that state head-to-heads 3 feet, both side to side and front to back. So that's the importance of having a logistics team added to the action plan. The testing coordinator and assistant will be with all test materials at all times until pickup. Additional highlights, the process to submit there will be a process developed to submit pictures of FedEx shipping labels at pickup. There will be regularly scheduled meetings to review status updates both before and after testing, including both teams and myself. After the administration, there will be a survey administered to the staff for feedback on test administration so we can continuously improve. And this will be the basis of the fire team work for the district. Now for supports. We've offered an ACT preparation class through GradPoint. That course highlights English, math, and science. Has 3 different sections in that course. Registration assistance for the July and September test dates. In June, our counselors were there and they assisted with the registration process. For the month of July, my office has been Command Central and I have personally registered students along with Ms. Trogdon, and then a lead teacher has been in to help as well. Application for accommodation request. Why is this support important? Because our 504 students and our IEP students have a special process to apply for accommodations. And when we're testing outside of a school-based test, it's a different process. And I'll speak to that again in a moment. And when the students return, we're going to have counselor meetings with students concerned about early admissions. The guidance team met on their first day back and they divided up colleges that have an early admission process. And they are personally calling colleges to get information directly from them so we can properly advise students to the college of their choice. College-specific information will be provided to all those students. We also pulled all the SAT scores for our students, and we have those in a spreadsheet so we can also properly advise students based upon their SAT score for early admission as well. Now the numbers. In July, we had 10 students test, 5 registered at Pinecrest, and then 5 requested reimbursement. For the upcoming September test, as of today, updated from your presentation, as of today we have 92 students registered. 83 registered at Pinecrest High School, and then 9 have requested reimbursement. These numbers may not be an accurate count of all the students who are going to take the ACT administration because not everybody's asking for reimbursement. So after the September test date, we'll get a report from ACT which will allow us to know exactly how many students tested in September. 3 students have been approved for special testing. Why is this important for you to know? Because those students will test at Pinecrest High School. When you get approved for special testing, I have to submit paperwork to ACT that states these students can test at our school. So they give us a testing window, and those students will be testing on Saturdays at Pinecrest High School with trained people on staff, primarily the guidance department and then our 504 coordinator. We have 34 students as of today enrolled in the ACT prep class. During the month of June, we spoke to 54 parents and students regarding the ACT. 20 of those students were personal calls. And once again, please keep in mind that we are not sure of the official number of students who are going to test in September until we get that report from ACT.
So in terms of the impact of the missing ACT scores on the 18-19 data reports, the ACT's participation at Pinecrest will be reported as less than 5% for all 2018-19 reports. Additionally, any reporting of ACT results, for example, the composite score, as reported out for the district, will not include Pinecrest High School. Therefore, it's going to be nearly impossible to accurately compare the Moore County Schools ACT data points over the years, since a large portion of the data is missing for the 18-19 year. However, in terms of the school report card grade, that letter grade that's assigned to each school, the ACT data, the ACT data that is included is based on the senior class. And so that means that the 11th grade ACT scores are banked until the following year when the students are seniors. So our junior class, those scores are banked until their senior year. So what's going to happen is that we will have those scores in time to be used for the school report card. So therefore, there is not a negative impact on the calculation for school performance grade for the 1920 school year. 18-19 or 19-20. let me be clear, this school year, the previous school year, or the one we're going into. We have worked closely with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to ensure that every student impacted has the opportunity to retest, and that their scores will count for all possible accountability measures at Pinecrest High School and Moore County Schools. Any student who takes the test, either during the Saturday administration for the school, or at the school administration on October 1st or 15th, will be included in accountability measures. This will ensure that students who took the assessment in June, July, or September during the off-site Saturday administration will not need to test again on October 1st and 15th to be counted for accountability. However, their scores will be included in the composite score reports, participation measure, and school performance grading. Well, Moore County Schools has opted to afford any Pinecrest student senior the ability to take the ACT. The only students who will be included for our accountability measures will be students who were eligible for the ACT testing during the March 2019 administration, so the late test date, the makeup test date for ACT administration. That is any student who was enrolled in 11th grade at Pinecrest High School on the March data collection date. NCDPI is going to be providing us a list of those eligible students. All eligible students will be required to test. However, we have several opportunities for them to be assessed to be included in the accountability measures. Those opportunities were previously outlined by Principal Phillips. Any student who is on the NCDPI list will take the ACT, and their participation scores will count towards accountability measures. Any student who tests who is not on the NCDPI eligibility list will receive scores, but they will not count towards participation in score reports for Pinecrest High School. So if you have a student who enrolled after that March date at Pinecrest, they will still receive their scores. They'll be allowed to retest. They'll receive their scores, but it will not necessarily count in our accountability measures. Impacted students who were at Pinecrest High School in March of 2019 and have since transferred to another Moore County school will be included in the retesting opportunity and will be included in accountability measures. So if a student had transferred to Union Pines or Northmore, they will be included in this process. We are currently working to identify who those students are that meet that criteria, and if there are any, we will work with them and their families individually to make sure that the students have equal access. Impacted students who were at Pinecrest High School and have since transferred outside of Moore County schools will not be included for accountability measures. So if you had a student who transferred out at the, let's say, April, and they've transferred out, they will not be included in our accountability measures. However, Moore County schools will make sure that these students are given the opportunity to retest at no expense to the student. And we have already worked with at least one family to ensure that that happens. Students who have taken the ACT or SAT prior to the September Saturday administration who does not wish to participate in the fall 2019 ACT testing on October 1st must have met certain score requirements, which will be posted on the Pinecrest website. These students must provide a copy of their scores to Pinecrest High School and complete a waiver form. The waiver form will be submitted to NCDPI for processing. All eligible students still enrolled in Moore County schools who do not test either during the June, July, or September Saturday administration or the October 1st and 15th on-site administration, and who do not meet the waiver requirements will count against the accountability measures for Pinecrest High School and ultimately Moore County schools.
Thank you. Shortly after the incident at Pinecrest High School, Dr. Grimacy directed us to put together an assessment process review fire team. We've already had our first meeting, and as you can see, there's representatives on that fire team from across both the central office as well as across all of the high schools. That includes Kate, of course, Tanya Del Conte, our manager for testing and accountability, our CTE people, Tracy McNeil, Ms. Phillips will represent the high school principals on their team, as well as AP coordinator Jennifer Kearney from Pinecrest High School, Josh Newton, who works with us at Pinecrest, is also the coordinator for Sandhills Community College, Joseph Patterson, the test coordinator at Northmore High School, Chris Monroe, a counselor and AP coordinator at Northmore High School, Nick Capps, who handles testing at Union Pines High School, Renee Portfolio, the counselor for UP, and Melanie Lee, a career development coordinator for Union Pines High School. In addition, Ken Eklund will provide an advisory role for us as Director of Technology if we would like to do some online testing. we're going to be looking at more than just the ACT assessment that we give. We're also going to be looking at the pre-ACT, the work keys, the advanced placement, the WIDA, the Read to Achieve, the end of grade, the end of course, our North Carolina final exams, our CTE post-assessments, all of the state and independent assessments that we are required to give. We're going to look at our processes and procedures around them. This team will do work in this area. Some of the procedures we'll be reviewing, the training procedures and our requirements for that, our timeline, security measures, accountability procedures, accommodations, logistics, and whether we want to go online or paper and pencil administration. These will be the topics of our conversations in the world, will guide our work. We want to make sure that we have appropriate procedures in place and that they are consistent from school to school and are applied with that level of consistency. We've already met once. We met on July 22nd, not from 2 to 3:30 a.m. We are committed, but not that committed, I might say. We actually were from 2 to 3:30 p.m. We had each of our high school principals there and set the ground rules for the work that was going to become and where we wanted to have our starting point. Our next meeting will be August 7th from 8 to 11:30. We'll really dig into this work. Then again, August 29th. September 9th, Kate will be leading this, where she will be at an LEA directors meeting and will be meeting with representatives from other schools in our region to get a feel for what their procedures and processes are at their district level and at their school levels in their school districts. And she will bring that information back to us. We want to make sure we're being consistent and we're not missing something that other schools and other systems have in place that we might not have in place. So we're going to be comparing notes with other districts. And then September 25th is our final meeting. Of course, we will continue those meetings if need be, but hopefully we'll have processes and procedures in place for all of these assessments. And of course, we'll report back to you as we move through this process. We're also, as Principal Phillips noted, providing specific support to the administration on October 1st and October 15th for the ACT. So as this work continues, we're going to give special detail, special look at the work there to make sure that's done appropriately. And we are certainly here to answer any questions that you may have.
Go ahead, Pam. What impact will this have by not having the 95% participation?
Because we've been working with DPI so diligently, they just want us to be aware of that 95%. Usually when you do not meet 95%, you have to come up with an action plan of how you will avoid that in the future. You have to provide documentation about why you didn't meet it. All of that has already been handled as a part of this process. So they are aware of that 95%. They do expect us to meet 95%
The following
in
year.
the retest. So as a part of this retest, now they've opened it up, so it's not just the testing on October 1st and 15th. It also includes those Saturday administrations prior to September. So when we add all of those together, they are anticipating that we meet 95%. And if we don't, then we will have to provide the action statement and
Okay.
all of that.
Thank you.
Stephanie, first I want to just acknowledge your initial comments of taking responsibility and accountability going forward. We certainly recognize that this incident was human error, and putting a plan in place going forward. We just appreciate you and the things that you've already done to move forward with this process. One of the questions I have is, with the turnaround time following the testing of getting the material together and FedEx, and is there a designated time frame from following when the students take the test and getting the answer sheets and getting those picked up by FedEx?
Yes, ma'am. ACT schedules FedEx to pick up the next day at the school. They have put a little caveat in there that if they're not ready at that time, then you can take them to ship on site or whatever your local FedEx provider is. But the expectation is that they're sent out the next day, and it's at your regular FedEx pickup time that every school has.
Okay. And the students, the 10 students that did the retake in July, were all of those students part of the initial February, March testing that their information was lost? So we didn't have anybody new to pop up, basically? Okay.
questions.
When do we expect the results to come back from the administrations in September and October?
It's a 3 to 8 week window.
And can ACT speed that up at all for us, or is that is set in, that's their process?
Yes, ma'am, it's their process.
And I will add that oftentimes it's a little bit longer than the 3 to 8 weeks for the schools to receive the score reports. The
But
individual
they go
students
directly
receive them.
to the
Yes.
student, correct?
The scores go directly to the students initially, and then we also, as a school system, get the reports, which can sometimes be after that 3 to 8 week window.
And an additional point with that is that's one of the things the guidance counselors are calling those early admission colleges for, because just because the student gets their ACT score, let's go with the low end in 3 weeks, it doesn't mean that that college pulls at 3 weeks. The colleges have certain dates that they pull scores. So you might receive your score in 3 weeks, but the college might not pull it to week 4. So that's why the guidance team has divided that up to get those dates specifically, the pull dates specifically from those early admission colleges.
Thank you for clarifying that. I didn't understand that they were calling the colleges themselves
Yes.
and not the students, so thank you for clarifying that.
Has a decision been made whether the October 1st administration will be an online administration or pencil and paper?
It will be paper pencil because that's the only option available to us through ACT.
Oh, it is,
They
okay.
require that that district administration be done on paper pencil.
For this administration, it is possible to go online for future administrations of the ACT.
So we anticipate trying to have as many students as possible taking this test again on October 1.
Yes.
Now, where is the September administration? That's,
It's a variety of locations. O'Neill School has the majority of our students testing there. We also have students testing at Scotland High School and Richmond High School.
whatever's convenient, yeah. And one other question, where we're noting that the testing coordinator position becomes a certified position, that's at all 3 of the high schools, not just at Pinecrest?
The other 2 high schools, only Pinecrest, because of
Only
their
Pinecrest.
size, has a coordinator. The other 2 schools use an assistant principal for that particular role.
So just so I'm clear too, because I have not gone through this, the ACT for the October administration, those registrations have not happened yet because that'll happen at school, or when do those registrations start
So
happening?
it's a little bit different. The tests that the students took in July and September are called national test dates, and those are individual registrations. The October test date is called a state test date, and for those administrations, we provide a database to ACT, and that's how the registration happens. It's not individually student by student.
Okay.
We just completed the online registration for Pinecrest to be able to administer in October.
Thank you. Any other questions?
May I?
Sure.
Dr. Metcalf, when would the school board expect to hear back from from you and the fire team?
We will report back in September and definitely October, as well as we provide information surrounding where we're at and any additional information we might have.
Will there be enough substance in September, or would you prefer to wait till October?
We put it on the agenda at this point,
Okay.
Dr. Grimacy, but as, depending on the progress of the fire team, we'll make a determination whether to pull that out, wait till October, or whether to provide a report to you in September as well.
One other question. Do we know if ACT is looking at their procedures for the receiving of tests? Because I still do wonder why they didn't make note that having shipped supplies to Pinecrest, they never received score sheets. And that didn't sound a bell of alarm for them as well. So are they looking into their procedures?
What we were told from our DPI contact who's communicating with ACT is that ACT has launched an internal investigation as well, but odds are we will not ever know the results of that investigation.
Yeah,
It is
even,
something that they did realize was an issue and a concern, and they did address that with our DPI.
you know, even a simple postcard or an email that says, all materials received
Yeah.
would be a reassurance.
We thank you for your work
Yeah.
this summer. We know that this is something that we hope will never happen again. With all the procedures that are going into place, it sounds like looking at all of our testing is the right thing to be doing at this point to ensure that this won't happen again. And my expectation is that I think those LEAs that you're going to be talking to in September might actually be looking at us at what we're doing.
I've already received at least one email.
I'm sure. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of reciprocity to ensure that this type of thing doesn't happen in the state again. So thank you.
Thank you. With your permission, Madam Chair?
Yes, next
I'll
item.
invite Mr. Barath to come forward for item 2B, Budget and Schedule Report for New Construction Projects. This is a new feature to the work session agenda, one that we think that we'll begin to include in future work sessions. This is our first go at it. We see refinements in the future. I will turn it over to Mr. Barath, who will lead with the significant, most significant news, that being the opening of bids for construction of the new Pinehurst Elementary School. Mr. Barath.
Thank you, Dr. Gramercy. Good afternoon, board members. In the long narrative there, apologize for that, we will be brief in the next ones moving forward with a lot more imagery, pictures, and schedules and such to talk about. This one's more narrative to bring the board with the information on the Pinehurst opening as well as the progress on the other schools under construction, especially those that are getting ready to open. So to start off here with Pinehurst Elementary School, the good news is we had 4 bidders submit bids for the new school last week on August 1st. That was good news. The apparent low responsive bidder is Thomas Construction Group based out of Wilmington, North Carolina. Now their base bid amount was $31,750,000. The bid range from the low to the apparent high bid submitted is just about 5.3%. The bid difference from the lowest bid and the second lowest bid was 0.6%. So this signifies to us that we had a good bid process, a good tight bid opening. So following the bid opening, the architect began working with Thomas Construction and looking for verification of their bid and preparing the certification of the bids that were submitted. The identified budget, that's the blue sheets that everyone's been looking at all these years for each project broken out. In that sheet, we had identified $28.87 million for the construction of the school. That was the combination of the construction items listed in the top portion of that budget sheet and the applicable prorated amount of the inflation applied to that to get to the $28.87 million. That means the difference between the apparent low bid and the budget for the project as identified is $2.88 million. Now, staff and the design team, consisting of Ratio Architects, LKC Engineers, Dewberry Engineering, and Thomas Construction Group, had a conference call Friday to discuss other opportunities in the project that we want to take a look at to consider opportunities to save. I want to remind the board that we went through this process on the previous projects. Everything that came out of the process on those projects for opportunities to save without sacrificing operation or sustainability of the school has been incorporated into this project. However, this is a different design team. This is a different contractor with different subs. So we're hoping that with another whole set of eyes, there might be some items that we can identify in here that could bring potential savings to the project. The group will meet on August 16th to review the entire list of proposed items and then immediately follow up the following week to develop a final recommendation to the school board for presentation on September 3rd. There are funding opportunities within the total project. Again, keeping in mind that if we look specifically at the Pinehurst Elementary budget sheet, there is identified $945,000 of contingency. There is a remaining prorated amount of the escalation inflation cost of about $195,000. Combined, that's just over $1.1 million of available funding there. If you apply that to the $2.88 million, you end up with just over $1.7 million of needed funds. Now, if we were to drain all of the contingency money to put it into the award, we must exercise caution because this site is not an undeveloped site. This site had previous structures on it at some time. We do not know what might be encountered as we begin putting in utilities and foundations for the new building as well as the demolition of the existing structures. So the design team is going to evaluate the potential risks for all that in our assessment that we bring to the board on the 3rd. The current status, because again we're working on a $103 million budget that we divided up amongst the 3 schools, but for the overall project of the 3 elementary schools,
which means you would include the deficit on Southern Pines Elementary of the $2.68 million, creates a cumulative deficit of $4.4 million. We still have unused funds in the Aberdeen and the Southern Pines projects. There is contingency for those projects. We had to take some of it to apply towards the award, but we still have remaining contingencies there. We also have the remaining proration of escalation inflation in there as well. When you bring those potential funding items together, it's just over $1.4 million, which reduces the overall deficit to just over $2.9 million. So you can see that there's some opportunities still that remain in the overall project of $103 million to continue to work towards developing a number that is going to fall within the $103 million. We also, through McDeeds Creek Elementary School, which is done through a direct finance separate from the bond, with the furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology purchases that are being finalized there for the final items to be delivered to the school, we will have a clear understanding of exactly how much of that money may be left over as surplus, because each project has the same number of items in them. So there's also opportunity for additional surplus through those FF&E and technology items that would be applied to it that we will know more information on at a later date to help us structure the final impact to the overall budget of $103 million.
John,
Before I move on.
let's be sure we make clear that any surplus on McDeeds Creek is not available for transfer to the bond-funded projects.
Correct.
But it does inform what we might expect as we move into the bond-funded projects. Are all board members clear on that?
Yeah.
Make sure there's no confusion, make sure there's no confusion on the part of the public. Go ahead.
No,
You
that's
were
correct.
going to add another point, I might have cut you.
No, at that point, I was going to pause there and ask if there are any questions
Very good.
regarding the bids that were opened. And again, we will bring a full presentation to you at the award at September 3rd.
We'll pause in between each report on each project. Madam Chair, any questions on the Pinehurst Elementary bid opening process?
The award, the apparent lowest bidder, have they done work in Moore County before or nearby?
They have not done work in Moore County. We are in the process of requesting their entire resume of all school projects and scale-up projects within the past 5 to 7 years.
And they're a North Carolina
They're
company?
based out of Wilmington, correct?
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay,
Any
John?
other questions?
Thank you. The Camp Easter, or I'm sorry, the McDeeds Creek Elementary School, old habits die hard. McDeeds Creek Elementary School is in its final stages of wrapping up the small touches left in construction, as well as stocking the building with all the furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology items. If you've tried to head out that way, you would have noticed that the road is closed out there as they are finalizing work on the traffic roundabout that they are installing out there. The construction company, J.M. Thompson, and the town of Southern Pines will be conducting their certificate of occupancy inspection of McDeeds Creek Elementary School on the 12th. The fire marshal has already conducted his walkthrough, and all his items have been addressed at this point. The issue tying to the occupancy permit beyond just the school is the completion of the roundabout. The closure of the road has enabled them to expedite their process out there with the construction of it, and trying to make sure that we get the roundabout done at the completion of this weekend coming up. So the completion of the roundabout and the final inspection of school will all tie together and have it in place for teachers to respond to the school on the 14th and open the office officially. That is the status of it this time. Does anyone have any questions regarding, oh, I forgot the most important thing, I'm sorry. There will be a ribbon cutting ceremony on August 22nd at 10 a.m. at the school. Want to make sure that's on the calendars. Now, if there are any questions on the wrapping up of that project.
No,
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna make a comment real quick, that we got to tour the McDeeds Creek. You were gonna say something. And, it was just wonderful to see made me a little anxious that a lot of stuff wasn't done as far as like furniture and stuff, but I know that they probably have it way under control. But it was wonderful and amazing to see it actually all built and all done, so. It'll be great for the ribbon cutting. Sorry, you can go ahead.
that's what I was gonna say. Everything is beautiful.
It certainly was beautiful. One question about the landscaping. I know that some of our early plantings have suffered because of the hot weather. Now, is that a cost we must absorb, or did we go to Lowe's and buy those plants and they're guaranteed for a year?
No. All the landscape is warranted for 1 full year. Any type of construction in North Carolina is warranted for 1 year. So those plants, we just could not replace them in the heat of the summer.
No point in it.
So
that's
all
right.
those trees that have unfortunately not survived, they will be replaced here in the fall when the temperatures enable us to do that. So that is an item that we identify in our substantial completion punch list, and we withhold funds until they are complete.
Well, it's been a brutal summer, so it's well understood why it happened.
The only thing I'd add is being at the tour last week really brought home for us, the first of many openings that are coming our way. And the amount of work that everybody in this room has done, that you have done, Dr. Grimacy, that our county commissioners, that our public has done to get these, and parents have put towards ensuring that we have appropriate facilities for our students. And it was really exciting from that standpoint to think about the where we've come in the past few years. So I hope we acknowledge that too, all the hard work that went just to get to this point. So thank you.
Job well
Welcome.
done.
The next project talked about is a temporary Pinehurst Elementary School located at Rassy Wicker Park. The modular units are in place, are tied down, and have power activated to each one. Ramps and stairs are just about done on the units. The sidewalk is in its final pouring stages this week. We will begin moving into that unit starting tomorrow when we start taking our interactive whiteboards, the smart boards, out of the existing school and placing them in the new one on the walls. On Wednesday, the contractor to move the furniture and the boxes and everything else at the school will begin his work of locating it all in the temporary school. And that will go through Saturday this week. And so the emptying of the existing school should be complete by the end of this weekend. The school, during this period of interruption of having to manage and make sure things are moved and placed in the appropriate places at the temporary site, will have their offices closed beginning Wednesday and set to reopen on August 14th at the new site. That's also because our service that we have for data, phones, and everything needs to be just a single switch over so they ring at the new place in a seamless manner. So for those days, the front office will be closed officially at Pinehurst Elementary School and reopen on the 14th at the temporary site. In the interim, any families that still need to enroll a child will be covered by the assistance of central office during that period. Also, on August 16th at 10 a.m., we will conduct a similar walkthrough like we did with McDeeds Creek with the board, with the commissioners, and with the village to offer a initial look at the completion of the temporary campus. And of course, parents and such will have that opportunity when they come to their open houses at the school. A lot going on out there, but it's looking very nice. Any questions from the board?
Do we have a date of when Pinehurst will be, when you will knock it down? Or is that still all kind of up in the air?
We don't have a date on that until we get a chance with the contractor to look at award a budget and get their
that done.
calendar
Okay.
for construction. However, we're not awarding the contract until about mid-September, and so they wouldn't be scheduling and mobilizing to demolish until the end of September, beginning of October. And we'll be conducting a demolition ceremony of some kind to notify the board and everyone to witness the first stages. And I will also bring in to the board in September a list of items from that school that we wish to declare surplus to auction off to the public.
Again, we know that trying to get our temporary site set up has had a lot of work involved. So again, we appreciate you, John, and Dr. Bob, and everybody that has lended a hand in that effort, because I know it may not have been easy, especially with the heat and everything that they've had to endure. So we just appreciate the help in getting that up and ready for school.
Appreciate that. It's also been all hands on deck with the school staff, both for McDeeds Creek regarding their school, Pinehurst Elementary staff, our own maintenance support staff, Roger Leeson in planning, and also with the support we have from academic services throughout this. And has not been solely me, it has been everybody. And I'll be sure to pass that on to them as well.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Aberdeen Elementary has come along well. It's just past the 50% completion mark out there. They are working towards getting to the point of dry-in, which means that they have the roof structure up and in place so the interiors can be dry and they begin doing critical systems work under dry conditions. With that phase also comes the opportunity means the bearing, which is the exterior masonry walls will be complete, and they can begin installing the insulation in preparation of facing it with the brick. So it's going to start looking a lot different very soon out there. It is continuing to progress well. Unfortunately, it is not one of those that you could drive by and see easily from the roadway. You can only see the school either by visiting the website for progress photos or by traversing back down the construction drive to see it yourself. So you may not have been able to go by as easily as Camp Easter, but I'm, of course, available and happy to take you out there anytime you want.
Red brick is being constructed on the back side of the building forward, so that you happen to go in there, loop around, and come back out. You won't see the red brick yet, but there's a substantial amount of masonry going up on the back side of the building. Any questions? Proceed, Mr. Brown.
Very good. Northmore High School, that is underway.
Skipped one.
I did? Southern Pines, I am sorry. Must be my subconscious at work. The Southern Pines Elementary School project is underway. One of the first things they are doing out there is building those retaining walls. As you recall, it's a very steep site that has a lot of tiering of grading coming down, and so some of the building does act as retaining walls, and so those are the critical items they need to construct first, which allows them to continue constructing foundations. So it is an exciting process to watch them form, create, and pour those. And as those finish up, they are already grading the pad area to have the new foundations and utilities installed underneath. There has been some concern with the heavy rains we've experienced recently, where the stormwater management basins have breached with the duration of rain being so brief with such a high volume. The contractor has come back in that instance and has repaired everything and restored the stormwater detention areas back to their original intention and condition. So we hope that we get a little break from the heavy downpours here and let the ground stabilize so that we do not run that problem again moving forward. But again, it's not an easy sight to see when you drive by. You can see it from the end of Glover Street and at the top of Carlisle, but if you would like to go out anytime, just please reach out to me. Happy to take you to the site.
There is a site that's being developed right off of Morganton Road that's next to the current building that's there that has the dental office and the restaurant. That is not our site, because a lot of folks are asking me if that's our school site. And do you know what that is? What that site
Sandhills
is?
Pediatric is
That's
going to
their
be building
building,
back there,
okay.
but that's also, the landowner has agreed to allow the contractor to borrow from there and to build up a site also otherwhere on their property.
Okay, so it's not ours.
It's not ours.
It's general development with the only current business going in there is Sandhills Pediatrics.
That's the only
there
one I'm
might-
But
aware
it's
of.
the intent of the developer to develop the property to make it more marketable.
It's convenient to have a pediatrician's office right next to our school.
Which came first?
Yes,
Proceed, Mr. Brett.
thank you.
Thank you. Now to Northmore High School. All right, so at Northmore High School, the utility relocations where the addition is being built out there is ongoing and finalizing its final process through that. The demolition of the locker rooms on the inside are about done. There's some small items still to finish up inside there, which tied to the utilities, power utilities that serve the entire campus. So as soon as those are relocated and bridged, they will begin to be able to conduct some construction inside there. The modular units that have been moved out of the way are set up on the parking lot where the buses used to be, and that's over on the west side of the site. So that bus parking lot is temporarily turning into our temporary classroom site. We have relocated the modulars that were at Northmore, and we have relocated the modulars, 6 modulars from Sandhills Farm Life up to there as well, because as you will recall, one of the buildings on campus is going to be inaccessible during this construction. So we had to accommodate them over with the temporary units in the parking lot. So as those units this week are being finalized and stitched together again, our maintenance staff is building the ramps and walkways out there, and power is being set up to service the units this week. And again, this is another example of all hands on deck coming together and plan to make sure that all classrooms have all the furniture and everything in them by the time teachers arrive on the 14th. So we're almost there with that one. It'll just take another effort by all this week to make sure we get to that point by the 14th. But I know Dr. Grimacy had previously sent an image out there from the site. You can see where it's been started to clear from where the modular units used to reside. And we are working with Principal Jenny Purvis to identify a groundbreaking ceremony date for when the students at the school can participate with the board as well and the commissioners during that activity.
Is there a place on campus where a photo of the work that's going to be done or the schematics are available for students to use? Is that something that we will keep at Northmore in case there are questions when students walk by?
That's a great point. I will make sure they have one of our presentation boards out there of the new plan for it out there. We'll make sure Ms. Purvis has that to
I can
display.
imagine that'd be exciting for the students to see as they're watching this change happening. They can have a visual of that in front of them.
That's
That
great.
might be
I will make sure
helpful.
she has that.
Any other questions about the Northmore project?
And the only thing tied to that is the Sandhills Farm Life, where there's still 2 modular units remaining out there that is going to be relocated by the end of this week, which means out at the Sandhills Farm Life site, we have some remediation of the grade out there and elements that need to be restored from where these units were. So we'll be restoring them back to their original condition, raking them out, pulling the utilities out of the way, getting rid of any broken up concrete. And then, of course, we can't plant any Bermuda seed right now to grow, just burn right up. We'll make sure we prep it and get some rye on it this winter and then get the Bermuda in it next spring, so that'll have a chance to go back to its original condition before modulars were added. So there's still a little work out there just to clean it up, but all the debris and everything will be cleaned up ahead of the teachers responding to work on the 14th.
John, did we get any trailers moved from Vest Lakeview, or are they still there?
No, they remain there. That is something that I will be also highlighting and pointing out in my next presentation.
So this is another one where we should be really excited, because just remember back a few years ago when we had to add a couple of modulars to Sandhills Farm Life, and the opening of McDeeds Creek will now allow us to get rid of them. And that I remember when it went right in front, right on that front lawn.
There's no
and
place else to put
There
them.
was no place else to put them. We talked about putting it on the tennis courts, and we got a lot of pushback from that. And it's gonna be a whole new school, and I'm just very excited for that community. And they'll be reassessing what a smaller size is like. They'll have to learn to live that way too. It's different. But it's also exciting to have that campus come back to what it was designed for. So I'm excited for that. So if I drive by, that one right in front is gone. Is that one gone
two.
already?
There's
two.
Yep.
The
There's
two of them
actually
are
3.
gone?
There was one down by the tennis courts on the side, and
Okay,
then there were 2 that were right out front. They're all gone.
they're all gone, okay.
We
Thank
have
you.
to- we have to tidy it up a little bit.
Yeah, just a little site cleanup.
The modulars are gone, but it's not pretty yet.
And that started this whole conversation.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think it's, or a part of it at least, so thank you.
You're welcome.
With your permission, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Barath, you'll invite some friends to join you, and I'll trust you for the entrust the introductions to you. Madam Chair, as they're getting ready, today we are going to review factors that justify the need for student assignment planning. And John will review the history of the school capital plan, how it came together, how enrollment projections drove a lot of the decisions we had to make, in addition to the need for modernization of some of our schools, the need to consolidate some of our schools. And so now we're in the process of building 4 800-student elementary schools. But when we get those built, we've got to then look at how we assign students among these schools. And so while we're at it, given the amount of disruption we have, we think that the time in the history of our school district has come where we need to look at the whole school district, as we've discussed before, particularly at our middle schools, because it's very difficult to reassign students to elementary schools without looking at middle schools. And then also, it's fair to say that as we've moved into this process, we've learned about some new needs, or some needs that maybe turned out to be more urgent than we thought they were. John's got all that covered in his presentation. He now has his presentation committee together, and I've done all the introducing I'm gonna do. And I hope they're ready, because Mr. Barat.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. Once again, this is not the efforts of me, this is an efforts of an entire team of people. I just happen to be the face in the vest that is the honor to present it to you today. But joining me, of course, we have Dr. Tim Locklear, who has been with us throughout this entire process and working side by side and helping to develop everything along the way. And appearing for the first time, we have Josh Ranke from Ramey Kemp and Associates. He is here as our traffic impact analysis specialist that we had brought in on the project, and he will be discussing the impacts and potential routing solutions that we have been looking at over the many different scenarios for the schools in this presentation. So, as Dr. Grimacy said, we're going to start with a little bit of a historical path to remind everybody of what got us to where we are here today. So, back in 2014, the board had approved a master facility plan, and it identified the projects that are associated to this. They knew back then that something needed to be done to relieve the conditions at the schools that they were experiencing at that time. In 2013, there were community meetings that were held, and the process began with input from key stakeholders throughout Moore County, and it came to accumulation, the development of this master facility plan. In October 2015, the Board of Education approved an updated master facility plan. This took some time to develop and to come to agreement with. It had a lot to do with the order because there was not the opportunity to obtain all the funding at one time. It was going to have to be broken down into bits of opportunity to fund and grow and begin to implement. And so with this, at the time, there were the 4 identified projects, the Advanced Career Center, along with the new elementary school and the replacement schools. So at the time this was developed, one of the great changes that happened in the process of the 2014 board adopted master facility plan to this one, you will note, is the capacities and the built capacity of the schools. The original plan had them at 650 students. Back in 2014-15, you may recall where we realized that should that hold true, that most of the schools would open with possibly modular units on them day one. And so at that time, the board recognized that the growth of Moore County and the need required a change to the capacity of the schools. This is important because it also provided opportunity at the other adjacent area schools. With this plan in place, the board worked with the commissioners and began to develop plans to finance and provide the funding for the projects. In January 2018, Moore County approved a direct financing of McDeeds Creek Elementary School. And in May of 2018, the public overwhelmingly approved the bond referendum for the 3 schools. So the planning of the new schools has a base beginning of identifying the issue at hand that is causing the need for the new schools. Didn't work. There we go. For pretty much the past 2 decades, ORAD Laboratory with the Institute of Transportation Research and Education at North Carolina State University has been working with Moore County and Moore County schools to develop these charts of tracking and understanding the growth of the community and the impact that growth has on the schools. They have been presenting these heat charts to the district for those over 20 years, and it demonstrates clearly in there the areas of great concern as well as some cases areas of opportunity. So this presentation here is from January 2018. This was the most recent complete land use analysis ORAD had conducted through 2017. That was presented to the board in January of 2018. And you can see in here, just again, red is bad, green is good. So you can see what we were looking at as a school district with relation to our ability to accommodate the students at those schools. And recently, it's hard to read from where you're at. We have updated the projections to carry out to 2028 in there. And you can see there's really not that much change from what the previous year's chart had indicated. We also included in here some historical. The 2018-19 school year is blocked out vertically with a darker outline on the border, sort of to the first third point. So everything to the left of that is for historical information, so you can see and identify trends and opportunities. One of the things to keep in mind here is when you take a look at these charts and you start looking at some of the numbers, these are facts that have been presented to the board for many years, and it's been evident throughout these charts. Last year, there were 2,823 middle school students. Well, we have the capacity for 2,848. Just another 25 students capacity at all our middle schools. We knew this problem. We also knew that there were over 4,000 students attending the high schools that had the capacity for 3,277. These are things that we knew. We knew that we had capacity problems just meeting those grade levels at our schools coming up. The results of this has been modular units. We have had to place modular units at many of our campuses. There were 6 at West Pine Middle, Pinehurst High School, Pinecrest, High School has 17, and Union Pines has 18 modular classroom units. 64% of our modular units reside at middle schools and high schools. This has created an understanding of the need that while we are evaluating that, yes, we have to, in our master facility plan, recognize the need for an additional middle school, recognize in the master facility plan the need for relief at high schools, but the first group of projects we needed to look at was the elementaries to bring the opportunity for relief there. But that at the same time, is there a way that we can have a positive impact on these overcapacity situations? We're going to go into greater detail a little later in the presentation on the guiding principles, but I want to put this up as a reminder that this is our guideline as the planning team has gone through the process of evaluating opportunities and options and scenarios for the student assignment process. You can see balance, efficiency, planning, and community. These were elements that the board believed that needed to be addressed to the greatest extent possible with each of every scenario that we evaluated and at each and every school. We're going to talk about this again in a little bit greater detail, but it ties together with it, and that was after the McDeeds Creek Elementary School attendance area. The board reinforced further areas of focus for the planning team, and these were identified in these 4 areas. So we had the need, and I should have been flipping these along the way. We had the guiding principles of the balance and the efficiency, the planning, and the community. And you can see how here they tie together with the planning for the new elementary schools. We had some unresolved issues still to address with the McDees Creek Elementary School, utilization, and also to the extent possible demographics and how they all tie in together. The middle schools I mentioned earlier, as far as our capacity and number of middle school students, the greatest impact to those are in the Area 1 and Area 3 location. These are your West Pine Middle, your Southern Middle, your New Century, and your Cranes Creek Middle Schools. So when you combine those schools together, you have a combined amount, capacity of 2,578 seats. You can see that in the bar graph, the highlighted green area is this forward coming school year, the 2019-20. To the left is the historical, and so to the right is where we're going. The red line represents our capacity limit, and you can see how that is exceeded moving forward.
And that's New Century, Cranes Creek Southern, and West Pine Middle.
Correct.
This is all students, all capacity. And we are just now to the place where we have a number of students that's basically equal to the total capacity. And going forward, the number of students will be exceeding that. And then as we get out about 4 or 5 years, it'll start to increase well beyond that capacity.
That's
So we've
correct.
got about 5 to 10 years to be looking at potentially building another middle school. Okay.
This represents West Pine Middle School with its historic, the current, and the forecasted membership and the impact you can see there with its capacity. The red line, 700 students, that is the capacity of that school. You can see for every bar on that chart how it exceeds that. Through our process of evaluating the choices and the options, we look at the schools in considering the growth. We also need to make sure we take a look at what does it look like in the school itself when something like this happens. In 2028, according to these numbers, that's 1,161 students.
In a school designed for,
700.
repeat that, please?
1,161 students at a school with a capacity for 700 students. That is a percentage of 166% in 2028. This would require at least 20 modular units to be placed out there in addition to the 6 they already have.
To be a total of 26?
Total of 26. Your student meal service times would be dramatically impacted, significant. If you stop and think about some of these activities and experiences of the student, you have your morning drop-off with over 1,100 students, what that line and the impact on Route 211 would be, and the time that line would take to move through. You also have the additional congestion of having the elementary, that is correct. You also have your meal service times. This school was designed to accommodate serving a school capacity of 700. You increase that this dramatically, you're gonna have students being served lunch before 10 and at well after 1 o'clock, creating that hungry syndrome of you're gonna be really hungry throughout your morning or in the afternoon. You're also looking at the afternoon pickup line and the time it'll take for that to happen, as well as the congestion. With 26 individual mobile classroom units out there, you also compromise the safety of the site, and especially in inclement weather, moving students out of those units into other spaces for other coursework and studies, as well as students' access to other programs. These all have impacts to that level. And what that would look like potentially would be this. You're looking at an aerial of the school. On the bottom, you can see the drop-off little circle parking lot where the front main entry is. You can see where the buses are on the left. There are 6 existing mobile classroom units out there. On the right side, there are 3 located on the lower right corner. And nestled kind of in the middle there, above that main entry point, are 3 worked into that little courtyard. The blue squares represent the additional units that would need to be placed out there.
That's not even all of them. That doesn't add up to 20.
14.
16, 18.
Well, 14 would be added,
Now there's 20.
and there are already 6 there.
I wonder if by error, I will amend this and have it replaced in there. I think it might have been on a layer that hid. I apologize. There were 20 added there.
Well, it looks a lot like the current Pinehurst Elementary School, even at this point,
But worse.
where almost half your students are not even in the building.
Yeah, there's others, and I apologize. I think when I created them and put them in there, they're on a separate layer that must be in the background, and they didn't come forward. That's my fault. I will get that corrected here. And
So
Work
you,
with Sonia to make sure this is made accurate, and then make sure board members are prompted when it's ready. I'm sorry.
they'll be done after the meeting today.
Ms. Caldwell, thank
I
you.
was just gonna say, so you would add additional 20 with the 6 that you have on there? Or were you
Correct.
counting the 6 with the 14?
Correct, adding 20.
Okay,
That's if we didn't
do anything.
assign, if we did not assign children from West Pine Middle to some other school, then this would be the destiny of West Pine Middle School,
In
based on-
2028.
based on current projections. Okay?
If we take just another sample at the adjacent school, West Pine Elementary School, its capacity is 600 students, and that's a red line going across there. The green bar representing this next school year. And you can see how this next school year, it's going to be just above its capacity amount. But its trend obviously is continuing to climb and grow past that. You will be looking at a school of approximately 830 students for a school designed for 600. Again, similar situation when you think about the potential impacts, what this would mean to look at. You would look at 12 modular classroom units out there. The school currently does not have any. And so we would look to strategically place them around the facility. And this is something close to this representation. You're also looking at similar impacts to the ability and times that we need to feed the students, to pick up drop-off queuing lines and times that those will take, and the impacts this will have moving young students in and out of school and around to different structures on the campus. Other examples, when we take a look, and this is important to look at too, is you look at Southern Middle School. This shows, again, its capacity of 700 students. You can see for the school year we currently completed and the one coming up, we're really close to that number. But the forecast shows a slight dip down there to stay under that. And yet at West Pine, we have the inverse happening, where it's continuing to spike and climb above that. So you can see the opportunity for some capacity here at Southern Middle. You look at West End Elementary School, and that has a growing trend out there. And its capacity of 500 students and how it is going to continue to exceed that moving forward. And that is a very challenging site. There is not a lot of available space out there to put multiple modular units. There is there's geography constraints. The back of the site has steep drop-offs to it. It's a very narrow linear site. As you recall how close it feels when you drive by it on 211. It's a very challenging site to try to accommodate mobile units as a solution out here, if at all.
Are we losing any frontage because of the 211 widening as well?
The plans do currently for the widening project indicate that there is, the easement setback is going to come onto our property some, but it will not impact our parking out there. So it'll be just eaten up in the lawn area.
Do we know who owns that land right beside, like if you're facing the school to the right?
That is all ours, all the way over.
Those
to the
trees where
street.
they have the Saturday morning flea market sales and things like that?
We own from the church property adjacent to it on the west side, all the way to the road, and at the moment, the road name slips me. I think it's
Yeah,
something
wherever that,
Road.
you go to the dump that way. Okay.
That's it. But and there's a ball field on the corner there.
Right,
So
okay.
Moore County Board of Education owns everything in between there.
So whose ball field is that, ours or
Moore
community?
County Board of
Okay.
Education. Cranes Creek Middle School. This school is unique. We'll talk about it a little more in this presentation, but currently its capacity is 478 students represented by the red line. And you can see how in past years and current years and moving forward for majority of the years, how it's going to be below that capacity limit. New Century Middle School, again, a school of 700 student capacity, has historically been under that limit, and you can see it's starting to trend a little growth out there. Well, eventually, it will exceed that moving forward. Some of our schools experience the opposite challenges. Westmore's an example of that. When you take a look at its capacity of 400 students and how the historical and the projected trends are keeping it well below that moving forward. We mentioned earlier the challenges at the high schools and the ability at all the high schools to serve all the students. Northmore's following a similar trend that Westmore is. It's occurring further out than Westmore currently is, but our current year that we just completed, Northmore was under its capacity of just about 560 students. And moving forward, it's going to hover there and then projected to dip a little bit based on the grades that'll be moving through the schools that are currently feeding into it. So it'll continue that decline later on, about years 5 through 10. And just as with the other two high schools, Union Pines and Pinecrest, they both have been historically above the capacity. When you look at Union Pines, has historically been that way and continues that same trend moving forward. This is put in here as just a reminder that yes, we are aware of this and the board is well aware of the high school situation. However, that is not at this time an item that can be addressed. It is something that needs to be addressed in the near future to bring the ability to get the high schools to a level of service more equivalent to its capacity.
John, I have a question. When administration presents their reassignment plan to us, will you have charts there showing how the reassignment plan will affect all the charts you've shown us here? Because obviously, we're not going to keep those schools like they are now.
We can have the similar charts to show the impacts and changes to them when we do the presentation, but that is not, the format of that has not been decided this time, but we will definitely.
Oh, I know. I mean, in the future, because then that'll be the only time we can really see when we need to do a new middle school.
We'll take that as input, Mr. Dennison, thank you. Yeah, we'll take that under consideration. We haven't
No,
finalized the plan.
Understood.
Yeah.
It is important to note the data tables that Numeric
I was
helps
gonna
us with shows us the capacity impact based on scenarios.
We're
based on-
expecting a lot of improvement in this area.
Yes, sir.
I think what Mr. Dennison's getting at is Numerics in the past has provided charts where the numbers are there. What we could do is get rid of the historical data on this one and start with 1920 through 2028, and then have these same bar graphs with one bar showing what it would have been without
Right,
student reassignment, and then right next to it, what the benefit is of student reassignment. That would not be that complicated to do. It's gonna add a little, we know it's gonna take some time to
Oh, yeah.
present whatever it is we bring back, but
No, understood.
we'll take that under consideration, Mr. Dennison, see what we can't do to make that visual representation. We'd have to do it school by school, and on September 3rd, unlike today, we'd have to do all the schools. Today, we're doing a representative sample, so just
Understood. I
bring your
understand
popcorn.
today, yeah. You can't have a chart unless you know what you're going to do for sure. so.
You know, I wanted to add too, although you just mentioned Union Pines and the overcrowding there as well as at Pinecrest, a lot of people don't realize what huge modular buildings and modular classrooms already sit behind those schools because they're not easily visible.
That's right.
But we've got a lot of students already in mobile units full-time.
And we're very fortunate that a lot of our students in the high schools are going to Sand Hills Community College for a portion of the day, so they're off campus, so it's not as dire as it was.
That's benefiting us in the short term, but in the long term, as those numbers
yeah,
increase, we'll feel that. So, we appreciate the board's input on that.
Very good. And then, with the work previously done by the board, remember this has been a two-step process. The first step that the board conducted was that they addressed the need to develop a student assignment area for the opening of McDeeds Creek Elementary School this August. So the board working with the staff and the planning committee consisting of Dr. Grimacy, Dr. Locklear, myself, Dr. Metcalf, and Numrex had put together through the guiding principles and direction of the board scenarios for consideration which the board responded to. And the end result was the adoption of this student assignment plan for McDeeds Creek. And as mentioned before, there were some unresolved items in here that still needed to be addressed. But going back to the guiding principles, because these were the elements that were used to develop that solution that we have continued to carry through in the process to get to what the superintendent will present on September 3rd. The guiding principles are intended to provide the direction to the planning committee on elements they need to consider and attempt to resolve to the highest extent possible with each and every solution. Give examples here. The principle of balance that is intended to improve situations where a school is exceeding its capacity at extreme levels, such as what we looked at and talked about at West Pine Middle School. And then other schools that have capacity, such as Southern Middle School. It also is to address large variations in student performance as well. So as schools that may be having lower performance and higher, to try to bring that into an equitable level as well.
Let me correct that, John. No, it's more to make sure that student reassignment planning doesn't upset the balance any more than necessary. That you make sure that schools that are high-performing remain high-performing, and that if you can do anything to affect those that aren't as low-performing, then that's a benefit. But you don't do that on purpose to do that. That's a secondary measure that we have. I just want to make sure.
It's a reporting tool that we have.
Yeah, the
That's
way you
correct.
worded that, I want to make sure that it's very specific and very accurate to it.
It's not to have a negative impact, and it is a
Yeah, we
reporting
want to
tool.
avoid any negative impact, right? Yeah.
The principle of community is also critical as maintaining transparency of the process, seeking input from the communities as well. There have been numerous presentations that have been presented to the board, that has been presented to the community at forums, providing lots of opportunities for input and opportunities for voice of opinion. Also, the principle of community leads out to providing a highest level of information and soliciting feedback. And throughout this process, that has been a key component of the board and of Superintendent Grimacy to make sure that everything we put out here is accurate, is a true reflection of the data and everything that we have seen, and it provides ample time for people to respond to, not just the board, but the community at large. Efficiency goes back to the example Dr. Grimacy's had, which was about not having negative impacts on solutions to current conditions that they may be experiencing. Whether it's taking a look at ride times for students and that they are not moved into longer ride times that come to it. No additional operational burden for costs for transportation or staffing, and also on child nutrition as well. Planning is to always consider maintaining that vision looking forward. We cannot work within a window of just looking at 2019-20. We must look into a reasonable window of the 10 years that we have exemplified through these charts. We want to make sure also that the planning does not in the future impose harm on any adjacent or changed school that's impacted. We have worked with the advisory committees throughout the process of not just the McDeeds Creek, but also for the process we've been going through now. We have also been working in public forums and presentations to the board, as well as website communications for frequently asked questions and clarifications on plans. The desired outcomes, which have been also factored in as emphasis to accompany the guiding principles, are elements in here that, again, to the highest levels that we can and to the extent possible accommodate these situations in the schools. There do not exist a lot of opportunities to improve capacity at existing schools. Okay? A lot of our schools you saw are well over capacities. You saw examples of some that are slightly under capacities. Our greatest opportunities is when the core capacity of a school is less than the classroom capacity.
No, it's the other way around, John.
Yeah, I said that backwards. It's more than the classroom capacity of the schools. What this means is if you take a look at a previously identified school with the board, Cameron Elementary, the current classroom capacity is 66% of the core. That means it has ability to service more students than classrooms are on the campus. And so they have the opportunity for another 34% students out there, which means they would need classrooms. That's as presented to the board. We looked at the opportunity with the addition being built at Northmore High School. When that is complete, we can move that large 6-classroom unit from Northmore over to Cameron and service those students and bring that school up to its core capacity. So, excuse me. Another example is Carthage Elementary, where its capacity is 61% of its core capacity. That has a site challenge, though. And that is, again, a site that is bound in, and there's no opportunity to place modular units out there. Cranes Creek Middle School, its capacity right now is 70% of the core capacity. Taking a look at where we currently are with it, this is from the previous chart, the 478 student capacity that's defined out there, and that's restricted by the classrooms that are built. Its core capacity is 700. If we were able to provide classrooms out there, we can now take that capacity from 478 to 700 students. What that would do is, when you think about the middle schools and the challenges that we had there from the previous slides, that it provides the opportunity to mitigate some of that by adding mobile classroom units there and creating more capacity without expending a lot of capital
I
funds.
think you jumped ahead a little too fast. Can we go back to the previous slide, please?
Sorry.
Okay, and so before you leave that, could you please explain what core is? What is core capacity?
Thank you for reminding me. Core capacity is the ability of a school to serve the number of students that are there through its central program spaces, such as the cafeteria, the media center, the gym, the admin support spaces. Those are the abilities of those functions to support a number of students in classrooms. So in the case of Cranes Creek, its core was designed to support 700 students. At the time it was built, to reduce the cost, they only built classrooms to serve 478 students, with the opportunities to expand out there in the future to grow the building to match the core.
So the suggestion of this slide is that by some means, short of actual construction, if we can bring the classroom capacity up to 700 to match the core capacity, we could get 200 more students into Cranes Creek and still be at or below capacity.
Exactly. We created the opportunity for over 200 students without breaching capacity of a school.
Right, so how might you do that?
Good question, Dr. Grimsey, and the response to that is we have a sudden surplus of modular units in the district. We have, thankfully have this surplus because we did need some to move to Northmore High School to facilitate that construction project. We also have some units that are available to go now to other locations. If we take a look at Northmore High School, we relocated the existing units on site to the new temporary location, the bus lot. At Sandhills Farm Life, the elements that are the mobile units highlighted in green have been moved to Northmore High School. So those units have been moved to Northmore High School to use right now to facilitate the construction of the school and disruption to the existing building. The other the other modular units, such as those identified in blue for Pinehurst Elementary School, are available to move to other locations. We can begin, because these units still have opportunity for some service to the district, and we already know from our earlier slides that we do have a problem with our middle school growth. It is far exceeding our ability to provide seats, and we will be needing mobile units to solve that problem. We have the opportunity to be prepared and move the units into place so that they will be ready at the schools to accommodate the growth. So at Pinehurst Elementary School, we can move units to Cranes Creek Middle School this year. They would be ready for the next school year to be potentially put into use. The highlighted in yellow mobile units are units that are in poor condition and are being identified as opportunities for surplus. We necessarily do not want to move them, have to refurb them to the level they would need to be. It would be best if they were surplus and disposed of. Some of them we will move here to the central office to use as temporary storage. We have some items from Pinehurst Elementary that need to be placed into storage until the new school is completed, and then at which time they can go back. So we have that from Pinehurst Elementary School. At Farm Life, we have those elements to go to Northmore. And at Vass Lakeview Elementary, you'll remember from the forecast charts, even with the solutions that were provided during the McDeeds Creek Elementary School student assignment, we were still looking at, we will exceed the capacity of that school in the future with the growth happening down east from that school. So we are keeping those units there as a hedge because we believe that they will be needed in the near years ahead out there at that school. That school is going to continue to witness that growth. Once the units are done with Northmore High School, there's an opportunity to relocate those. A large classroom unit would relocate to Cameron Elementary School in 2021, and we can relocate others to Cranes Creek Middle School to accommodate the opportunity there to achieve that 700 student capacity level. So this is just a chart indicating what the potential is to move where and for what year, and what frees up to use at other places, and which items we need to keep where they are. There are some units that we have not identified at Aberdeen Primary and Southern Pines Primary at this point. We will, throughout the year ahead, evaluate other locations where those may be needed, and if in the end they're not needed, then we'll bring recommendation of surplus to the board if necessary. But this gives you an idea of the opportunity, instead of either selling them all off and then turning around and having to buy units in the very near future, that we can strategically place them in position to help schools and to help with the ability to provide seats to students.
If I might, before you move on, John, we're going to, Ms. Carter, if you give me just a second. I want to emphasize something here. These modulars at Pinehurst, do you have the option to leave them there?
No, we don't, sir. Pinehurst
Yeah,
does
you've been
have
saying
to move.
opportunities, they're available, maybe. Do we have to move them?
We absolutely have to move. the
Okay, they
Pinecrest
have to go
ones.
somewhere, right?
Move them or sell them.
And so what are your options?
So the options are we move them or we sell them.
Okay, and if you don't move them to Cranes Creek, where are they gonna go?
They're gonna go up for, auction and sold and done.
Okay, so why wouldn't we sell them? I mean, hey, there's cash.
Because there is a need to place them into service, to hedge and provide the opportunity at Cranes Creek Elementary School to grow.
Okay, that's one thing, but what if somebody says the money's more important? Why wouldn't we just sell them and then, if we need them later, turn around and buy some other new ones?
Part of that has to do with costs. You will not be able to retrieve the cost of selling them that you would for paying for them.
What does that mean?
If we were to sell them, we would anticipate a maximum of approximately $5,000 to sell them. You'll recall that we bought some lightly used ones previously to place in the front of Sand Hills Farm Life for $20,000 each. So it would come at a greater cost if we were to try to sell these for a low return and then have to turn around and buy them at a greater expense.
So we're suggesting that this saves money. It makes better use of the taxpayer-supported buildings that we have in place. And it does, in the long run, save a lot of money moving forward. But it would be a way that we can make better use of Cranes Creek Middle School, given that the previous charts and graphs show that that's inevitable. We're gonna need that space, that core space. Okay, excuse me, Ms. Carter.
Well, we've sort of gotten to my answer anyway, because what I wanted to know is when you buy one brand new, what do you hope the life expectancy will be?
One of the things about, we call them modular units. Sometimes they call them mobile, and Dr. Grimsey and I have had this discussion. They're not really as mobile as you think they are. When you place them on a site, that's great for a brand new one, one-time move, one-time set. The more times you move a unit, the more wear that it receives. If a unit is to be placed on a campus, I will share that there are plenty of school districts across North Carolina that have mobile units that date back to the 60s. And they have been there since the 60s in the exact same spot. And that has been good in the sense that they've been able to sustain that type of life because they're not being moved around. But we would anticipate that the more you move one, you shorten its life cycle dramatically, just through the wear of that. I cannot give you how long it can last, 40, 50, 60 years, depends how well you maintain it, just like with our buildings. Our buildings, we have seen that in some cases, due to lack of funding for maintaining preventative maintenance and replacement of systems, the impact that has had on them in shortening their life cycles. And so it all comes down to your ability to maintain the structures throughout its life.
I just know we have them in other places as well, and we used to always call those temporary classrooms. And somehow temporary has evolved into permanent classrooms.
And that, a lot of times, unfortunately, is true. You will see a lot of schools, like I mentioned earlier, that go back to the 60s of being in place. Okay? So what could this potentially look at Cranes Creek Middle School? Again, this school does have a core capacity that was built for 700 students, and then its classroom support structures were built short of that. So we would place out there, the blue represents the modular units we would move this year from Pinehurst Elementary School out to that campus. And then the orangish yellow ones are the units that would move from Northmore High School in 2021 out the campus. It's just a suggested placement of them. We would continue to work with the principal on maybe which side of the courtyard serves better, et cetera, with the placement of them. But just to give you an idea of what it would take out there to provide the additional space needed to create a 700-student school and to demonstrate that we do have that capacity and ability with our mobile units inventory.
Okay, again, let's make this abundantly clear, make sure there's no confusion. The difference between this diagram and other diagrams that we've shown is that these modular classrooms will bring Cranes Creek up to its core capacity. It's designed for 700, and by adding these modulars, you bring it up to that core capacity and no more.
Correct.
In the previous slide that we showed of West Pine Middle School, those would be modular classrooms that take West Pine Middle School well beyond its core capacity. It would take it beyond 700, as much as 1,100 at that point. The Problem with that is that you no longer have the core to support it. You don't have the appropriately sized cafeteria, gymnasium, media center, hallways, administrative structure for that. And so in this case, modular classrooms, although temporary, we never think that that's the final remedy. This approach here at least allows us to use the appropriate capacity of Cranes Creek Middle School during this next 3 to 8 years, 10 years, while the capacity grows, while the number of students exceed the capacity, and we're in no position to build another school or build on to Cranes Creek. This is a remedy that we could employ to manage that mismatch between the number of students and the total capacity of New Century, Cranes Creek, Southern Middle School, and West Pine Middle School. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it also begins to provide opportunity to apply towards the guiding principles of efficiency, of balance, and of planning.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions or thoughts or feedback?
Would we be doing something similar to this for the core capacity of Cameron?
Yes, ma'am,
This
that's
is
the
what we
plan.
talked
Okay.
about, correct, that we would move the 6th classroom unit from Northmore High School in 2021 to Cameron. That will bring that school up to its core capacity to service students and accommodate them, creating opportunity there as well.
That has been our plan since we engaged in the student reassignment planning for McDeeds Creek, and so the public has been able to manage that. I think we've suggested that we might be able to do the same thing at Cranes Creek, but it wasn't until we connected the dots between the modular classrooms that had to leave the Pinehurst campus, and they have to go somewhere. We either have to sell them low and then later on buy high, or use them and reinvest them, plant them someplace and not move them any more than necessary. So instead of bringing them here and then moving them again later, we just move them right to Cranes Creek. The only other option would be to sell them at a very low price, knowing that within 5 to 8 years, we're gonna have to spend 4 times as much at least to replace them. So this, right now, is an area where we would appreciate at least your informal feedback today to let us know as we continue our planning in response to this.
Well, it's definitely cost-effective, and as we continue to look at reassignments, it gives us an opportunity to make possibly a new shift, or for students that may be closer to some of those areas. So moving once definitely would save dollars, especially we've got some good-looking modular units, and to be able to save those and repurpose in a different location would definitely be feasible.
One, it seems to be fiscally responsible as well,
Absolutely.
and we don't know when we can look at what our additional needs are in the facilities plan. If we have a solution at this point that we can use to buy some time for, any further construction, I think that's a wise choice on our part for the taxpayers and for us. Like you said, why move them twice if we don't have to? So let's go ahead and make some of those adjustments now. As long as they're in good shape, don't move any of the ones that are really not gonna make it.
And that's why on this previous chart, we have gone through already, inspected the ones that we definitely do not want to risk and put additional capital into repair to the level it needs to be. Also want to point out that while this opportunity for Cranes Creek is a benefit to that, it does not necessarily solve the balance of not exceeding our seat capacity relative to our cores at the middle schools of Area 1 and 3. It does go a long way to helping with that. It does not replace still the need for that future middle school.
It just buys time,
Yes.
Gives a little breathing in that.
buys
spot.
time.
If they're not in use, how do you secure them so that, how do you secure them and keep them updated so that they don't fall into disrepair?
Well, the units, if there's issues with trim or things on the outside, we go out and replace them, roofing, repair, replace as needed. So we do our standard maintenance on them, just as we do with our buildings as a whole.
Okay.
So that doesn't really change. It's the sequence of construction for these are meant to be light. They're meant to flex and things, and as things flex, things wear.
So you don't have to put the steps in or the ramps in right away. You're just going to place them for now.
We could place these out there and then come as work availability permits to build the ramps and the steps over the course of the year. These are not intended to move here from Pinehurst in the next 2 months to Cranes Creek and then to immediately put them in service. It is to be ready for the school year 21, 22
So we have some time.
for the opportunity for service.
You've got,
you.
on the chart back on 24, you've got 4 units at Vast Lakeview, and they're marked to remain at Vast Lakeview.
Yes, and that
You
goes
didn't
back to
talk
what-
much about the capacity at Vast Lakeview and anticipated growth as well. So we would leave those there thinking we're going to be putting them back into service, or are they still already being used and would continue to be used?
They would be placed back in service. There would not be the immediate need for them, but there soon would be. Without clicking back approximately 20 slides or something to demonstrate on the charts that
Okay,
have been
I can go back
provided,
and look at
even
that.
with the impact changes, Vast Lakeview still is going to exceed its core levels in the soon years ahead, very soon, and so we will need them to remain in service. Again, that is due to the growth that is happening down east from the school, down the peninsula.
Now, that sheet you're referring to, though, isn't necessarily because redistricting would affect that sheet.
The
Yeah.
redistricting could potentially impact.
Yeah, well, it will. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole reason why we're doing it.
That
Yeah,
area.
that sheet will no longer be valid. So based on that one, your statement is correct. But it won't be until we finish our student reassignment plan until we can really answer the question. So you're given somewhat of a definitive answer, but it's more of a speculative answer at this point. The truth is that those modulars at Vast Lakeview could still move. It's, as of today, we don't know that they would necessarily have to move until we're completed with the student reassignment planning process. So that's, we want to make sure that we're not
Right.
confusing anybody.
We hope we're moving enough children.
What Mr.
to
Bratt
meet
says
these
could be
creeds.
accurate, but it also
Yeah.
is still subject to change as we reevaluate the student reassignment plan, which is heavily dependent on a professional analysis of traffic congestion and bus route times.
That is, isn't it? It's a good lead-in.
We need one.
Successful transition.
We need one.
You're done hearing my voice, so right now I'm happy to turn it over to Josh Ranky with Ramey Kemp. He will introduce himself to you as well as company, and then take you through some of the work and process they have and studies they have completed.
Madam Chair, before we get into this transition, is this a good place for a break, 5-minute break, please?
We usually wait till the end, but I will entertain a
Thank
5-minute
you.
break if Ms. Thompson would like one, yes.
That would be great.
I am so sorry. Would you mind? We just keyed you up as well. All right, I call the meeting back to order. Thank you for the short break. Leave it with you.
All right. I'm Josh Ranke with Ramey Kemp and Associates. We're a transportation engineering and planning group. I work out of our Raleigh office. Our North Carolina lead for our traffic engineering group. So I work on projects across the state, both public and private. I've worked on probably over 50 schools in the past 3 years alone. Split my 16 years of experience between the Chicago area and now down here in North Carolina. So it's a bit about me. We were brought on board to look at the impacts of the potential redistricting on travel times. So we started out by doing some data collection, and the first slide we've got here, I'll go through. What we did is some key corridor travel times, and the first one that comes up there, we're calling that the Midland Road Roundabout. And what we did is, on a day that schools were in session, typical morning, we sent our data collectors out there between 6:30 a.m. and 9 a.m. And what they did was continuously run loops to kind of see what the peak period was and what the travel times were at different locations. So for this kind of location here, the Midland Road Roundabout, we looked at each approach, and essentially what was done was when they started encountering traffic, they started the clock on the timer until they could get through the roundabout. So we looked at each segment approach and got some data collected there. Going through, another key corridor is the NC5 corridor. So essentially we broke that into segments where there are the little round circles there, the red circles. Each one of those segments, they took the travel time between segments for a total travel time that could be broken up kind of into each segment there. And what they did, same thing, they just kept doing runs through that segment to see when the peak time was and what the maximum time was to do those runs. Yes. Oops, sorry. Yes, they were key intersections, which were primarily stoplights. And the next slide will have a breakdown, and we can kind of go through those a little more of what each segment was. And then we also did the what we call the US 15501. It's just a corridor there, which went from Johnson Street to Morganton Road, or vice versa, depending on the direction. And that was broken down into segments also. So going through this, and I know these numbers are a little small, but what we have is the corridor, which on the far left you see the Midland Road Roundabout. And while that has sort of the segment approaches and the times it took in seconds, there are no true, I guess, corridor numbers because it was just the individual segments. When they hit traffic coming in each direction, each leg of the roundabout, they took the times. So the times you see there, it shows that the peak times, travel times, were between 7:30 and 8 a.m. One of the things to note with that is the pattern we saw, well, we'll be talking about throughout this presentation, sort of the peak school times. A lot of the peak school times occur, the traffic for the schools would be slightly before some of these peak travel times. So a lot of that'll be work traffic, things like that. And the AM is typically your worst case. PM is sort of offset for schools during the weekday, so it was the AM we focused on. So you can see the Midland Road Roundabout. Each one of those segments is one of the approaches, so it breaks it down there and kind of has the delay times. NC5, that's where we get the breakdown where it had the different points in between, so you can go see it went from NC 211 to McKenzie Road to Morganton, and so on. And then sort of the second half of that is the flip route. So as soon as they did one pass, they turned around and took the times for the pass back and kept doing that all morning, essentially, to come up with when the peak period was and what those delays were for the peak period. So we also had a little bit of a focus at McKenzie Road and at NC5 and got some times there, as that was an area of concern, and then US 15501. As you work your way to the right, you can see not just the segment times, but then the total peak corridor travel time, and that's going to be in minutes and seconds for the existing data collected. And then the columns directly after that. What we did is sort of a comparison. So Google Maps allows you, the internet is fantastic, you can get all sorts of data. We wanted to see how this compared. So we took typical days where you can actually program in the day and say, what was the travel time at these periods during the day? Sort of a check to see how was that day that we collected data. So you can see, well, we had times for, say, the NC5 corridor there, about 13 minutes and 40 seconds. Google travel times were approximately in that time period between 14 and 16. So pretty comparable. You know, as you work your way down, I think we have the US 15501 corridor. We have about 5.5 to 6.5 minutes, depending on which direction during the peak period, and around that time period over an average time of 6 minutes for the Google travel. So that was primarily to kind of come up with, make sure that the data we collected looked pretty accurate. Also that the Google Maps times would be a good resource.
Go back a second to that.
Yes.
Just to further clarify, when you're reading this, as you come across, as he said, because the question came up at the segments, if you take and start with the block that says NC5, that top there, the very first segment is NC 211 to McKenzie Road. That was 149 seconds to do that segment. The next segment, which is from McKenzie Road to Morganton Road, took 169 seconds. So as you go through and review this data to understand what you're reading and how you're reading it, and then when you add up all four of those segments, you reach the 13-minute 41-second for that direction, and that'd be from NC 211 south to US 1. And it's the same thing for the Midland Road roundabout. When you look at the approachways, those are all in seconds from that direction until they flow into the circle. So as you go through and analyze this and reflect back upon it, just to understand what you're looking at.
All right, in this next table, essentially we've got current bus rider travel times, and this was data that was provided to us. Essentially we sorted through it, came up with maximum route times, minimum route times, average route times, and median route times. And to give you an idea, the times are based on, for traveling to school, it's when the first student is on the bus until the bus arrives at the school and parks. And then for the PM, it's the reverse. It's when the school bus starts to leave the school until the last student is dropped off. So your AM that's kind of how these were calculated. We then broke these down. Essentially, we had data for across the county. We broke it down into the different areas. So area 1, 2, and 3 would be corresponding to the high schools. So area 1 is Union Pines High School. Area 2 is North Moore High School. And then 3 is Pinecrest. So those are kind of at the top of the table there. You see the different maximum times. So some of those are pretty long. That's just the worst case we saw during the data collected. The minimum times, you can see those are significantly lower. Then we get into average time. So that's pretty typical of what we've seen. They correspond pretty well to the median times as well. So averages is going to be take all the numbers and whatever, when you calculate the number of runs per time, that's what you get, and then the median is sort of that mid-ground there. Are there any questions kind of how we collected that data or what we're looking at?
Sorry, where are you getting the data from exactly?
This was provided by Moore County, so they had the bus drivers. Is it the bus drivers, or was there somebody on the buses?
Through our Synovia systems, where we're able to track and identify when the first student gets on a bus and to when the bus parks at the school. So through Synovia systems we use on all our buses, we're able to download and get all this information to the consultant.
Great, thank you.
And so for each one of the areas, no matter the different directions that they were coming to and from, what this is indicating is that for any given direction, for example, area 1, it was at an hour and 59 minutes. Is that what you're?
That is correct. For area
Okay.
1, it's a maximum for the schools.
Doesn't matter.
And that's the AM, so it would be going to school.
Okay.
And once again, you know, sort of patterns we saw are, you know, it tended to be, oddly enough, some of the PM ones were higher, which is a little surprising sometimes because PM traffic tends to be a little lighter. But this is where it was an average for Area 1, taking all the data we had, and then saying in the morning it's the first student gets on until the school parks the bus parks at the school, and then the reverse in the PM. So when the bus leaves the school until the last student gets off. And so we also broke it down, we had the areas in the top there, then we broke it down between elementary, middle, and high schools. And you've got your same thing, max time, min time, average times. There you can see it appears the high school routes were actually typically the shorter routes. Elementary were kind of middle, and the middle schools were the longest there. And then we did break down the exceptional children. We isolated that in its own category there. So while you see the EC district-wide, that is not included in the district-wide. So district-wide was everything else, and we broke out the EC district-wide in its own little category there.
Was anything considered in the variables with the morning times, with parents dropping the children off for work and not using the bus route per se, versus in the afternoons using the bus route because parents would not be picking them up? Is that one of the variables in there?
Well, this is just straight up based on
Okay.
data collected.
Okay. Thank
So that would come into play definitely, but there are no adjustments to it for that.
Dr.
Yeah.
Brown and board members, just to, excuse me. Dr. Brown and board members, just to remind you all, the purpose of this chart then is for the staff to evaluate impacts of new bus routes related to student reassignment planning. Don't forget that. That's why we're doing this. So it may be accurate for a family to express concern that the new school that they're going to go to, the bus route is longer than the school they went to previously. But when compared to the average bus route across all Moore County, that new route to that new school that's a little farther may still be very modest compared to what the average route is for the whole county. Everybody following me on that? So it was important that Ramey Kemp and Associates identify the median, the average, and then the range, minimum to maximum, so that when we evaluate changes in bus route times, that rather than how the new bus route time compares to your previous bus route time, how does it compare to all bus routes in accordance with the range, the median, and the mode? All right, and so as we conduct as the staff attempts to put the finishing touches on a reassignment plan to present in September, we're going to be using these metrics to evaluate what we're getting ready to present when the time comes. And then likewise for the public and for the board, once that plan is presented, you can use this chart then. If you receive concerns about bus route time, you'll have this chart to make your own determination about how it compares with all routes across Moore County. And we'll show you a couple of examples. Our goal today is not to be exhaustive, not to evaluate every individual bus route or what that impact would be. We've had a couple of draft plans that we've put out there, some ideas, some of which received some criticism, and we've responded to that. We've listened to the public, and we've kept in mind some of the critical feedback that we received in the spring, some questions that we received. We've worked hard and worked very diligently this summer to address some of those things, and we're going to use a few of those as examples as we finish up here. So, Josh, take it from there.
One quick question.
Yeah.
Do we really have an EC student on the bus for 3 hours and 37 minutes in the afternoon?
That's,
According to the
That's the
data.
yeah,
district
that's a
one.
maximum, so it could have been, once again, you see the minimum is 45, the average is just under 2 hours, so whether it was, I'm not sure if it was inclement conditions or traffic issues, but that was the maximum that was observed of the data we had.
Long bus ride.
So that's not the average maximum. That is,
that
at
is-
some point during this year, there was a child that it
On the
took that
bus.
long to go home.
Correct.
And that's the complete range on that. Yeah.
So, yeah, it would be the last student to get off at the worst possible day of the data collected. And that's what that time is there for the EC district-wide. So we'll kind of get into what we've just started discussing. And what we've got here is I tried to put graphics to it, and then we'll kind of compare it to the table we had previously. So there were certain key communities that we wanted to look at the essentially two schools, the one that they currently would attend and the potential redistricting. So here, and once again, red and green, I know our traffic engineer, I don't know why we gravitate towards that. It doesn't mean slow and fast or anything like that. It was just for color comparison. So what we have is the blue star in the middle sort of there is the J. Dowdy Road community. And what we did was we took then the data from the previous, from the data collected on the bus routes for the existing conditions, and then we did projections for the potential future conditions. So it's essentially providing a comparison of the school they would attend now to the potential school in the future. So for this one, you can see these are approximate times. It's hard when you're looking at the future, you're looking at historical data and things like that. You know, obviously there are roadway improvement projects that will happen in the future that could change this somewhat, but this is based on the data we collected with the data that we got for the bus routes. And essentially we've got, this one is pretty comparable. We have approximately 52 minutes for both of these routes. So there wouldn't be any expected change or inconvenience to a rider coming from this neighborhood going to either one of those schools. And I guess as you look at this, I'll pop to the next slide, which kind of we can show where that fits in. But are there any questions with how we looked at the two different routes? Okay. So keeping in mind this is approximately 52 minutes. These routes actually are significantly lower than the average times. I think we had an hour and 10 minutes, an hour and 9 minutes for Area 2 and Area 3. The elementary school average there we have an hour and 3 minutes. So once again, the 52 minutes is lower there. Just kind of, we'll go to
So
the
that's
next.
the same chart we saw earlier, right?
Yeah,
Nothing's
it's gonna
changed on
be
that
just
chart.
kind of,
Okay.
so when I'm
Thank you.
flipping through to kind of.
Instead of going back and forth, we,
Yeah.
it reoccurs there so we can keep
Yeah, it'll
moving.
keep, after each one of these slides, we put it in there. So the next one we have here is gonna be, the Eagle Springs community. And what we have there is the trip to West End Elementary and then to Robbins Elementary. So this one you can see there is a little variance. So we have an hour and 13 minutes for the route to West End Elementary and then to Robbins Elementary, although the distance is significantly further, as you can see on there. That is just actual distance. The travel time is an hour and 23. Now, once again, these are approximate. It is based on the data we had for the bus route, which is accurate and existing, and then projections for the increase in travel time or difference in travel time for the potential school. So with this one, Robbins, I think, is in Area 2. And, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Area 2, which is an
Okay.
hour and 10.
So that's an hour and 10 is your average there. So that's going to be a little bit above the average. So an hour and 23 minutes is slightly higher than the hour and 10 average. And then the West End that one is Area 3, and that's typically an hour and 9. So the hour and 13 is slightly above that as an average for that area. Once again, keeping in mind that the elementary school average is an hour and 3. So both of these routes are a little bit higher than that average for elementary schools and slightly higher for their areas.
I thought this was interesting, if I could elaborate just a little bit. The difference occurs when you get to the junction with 705. And so with one route, you're going to go north on the route itself, the circular bus route itself, picking children up in the Eagle Springs area is somewhat of a circle. Not exact, but it's sort of a triangle or a three-sided round triangle, let's call it. Okay. And so a good part of that hour and 13 or hour and 23 is just picking up students. So the real comparison then is the difference from the junction with 705 to West End and junction with 705 to Robbins. So if you were to take a ruler and measure that red line and then go north on the green line and put a mark there, it's that last difference on 705 from that mark to Robbins that represents that 10 minutes. Other than that, it's all the same. And that 10 minutes, the bus is not picking up any students. So it's just moving, and it's moving at whatever the allowable speed is and what the bus can cover. There aren't a lot of stoplights or anything else. And so it's important to bring that perspective to that with the feedback that we got, the concerns that were expressed about distance, and then to measure that against the average route time for the whole district. I found that to be real interesting when this feedback came back, and it's very pertinent. It relates directly to some conversation we had last spring. No conclusions. It was just I just found it was interesting. Board members, I defer to you on that.
So just a question for clarification. So the routes that are current, so for instance, it would be the West End one, those are based on current data that we have and where the pickups are and all of that. And then the one that's future would be the same pickups in Eagle Springs, but then are there certain assumptions about how many stops additional it makes, or is it a straight shot?
That's where it came into play with the data collected and the Google data that we collected of the times that those travel times would be. So we don't have additional stops after it branches off there. So it is just like I said, it's an approximate thing. It's coming up with the best way to predict the future. So it's saying, yeah, it's picking up the same amount here. When it branches off, the increase in time is expected. Once again, Google Maps, if there were a situation, this one it's pretty smooth sailing. If there were something where there were traffic delays at a certain point, not because of stops, but because of just general traffic in an area, stoplights, things like that, the Google and the data we collected would account for that increase. But it isn't because of additional stops along the way or anything.
That's helpful, thank you.
And once again, that was the table where we showed those examples there. They were slightly higher than the averages for the area, and a little bit even more so higher for the elementary schools. The next one we have is considered the Foxfire community area. And there we had the New Aberdeen Elementary School and West Pine Elementary School comparison. So this one they're fairly similar. They're expected to be about an hour and 28 minutes for the existing and the future. So once again, flipping to the next table, you can see that's a bit higher than the average. I believe those are both Area 3, and that's an hour and 9 minutes. So, we're at an hour and 28, which is higher. Once again, that existing is pretty comparable to what would be expected in the future, and it is significantly higher than just the average elementary school. And on this one, we have the Village Acres community, and then we're starting to look at middle schools here. So we have Southern Middle School and West Pine Middle School. And Southern Middle School is approximately 48 minutes, and the expected West Pine Middle School is 43 minutes. So this one is one where it's slightly less. Flipped. Current is West Pine, which is 43. And Southern Middle School is 48, so it's slightly higher for that one. Once again, it assumes similar picking up the students and then splitting off kind of the direction it heads to those two schools is very opposite. And this is one where, a lot of that data collected comes into play here with the route, so the expected does kind of take into consideration. So this one, they are significantly lower, both of these routes, than your averages. Your averages are an hour and 9 minutes for Area 3, and for elementary schools, it's an hour and 3 minutes. Middle, hour and 16 minutes. So even better. And this next one, we have the Pinehurst number 6 community. So this is another middle school study. And we're looking at Southern Middle School and West Pine again. These ones are very comparable, 42 versus 43 minutes. So there's really not much variation there of what is existing and what would be expected. Once again, very different routes that they take, but the projections kind of take into consideration things like any traffic they'd encounter at those peak periods.
Josh, were you all able to get a picture of what impact that we would have on the circle if Village Acres and/or Number 6 were to be reassigned to Southern Middle School as they were in Draft 1 that we considered? What would that add to the circle?
In terms of increased delay, it is something that, that there would be potentially some. Now, in this case, we've got both of these routes going through the circle. As you look at that, typically what you see is, with the redistricting, you might have certain routes that do go through the circle and then other ones that now no longer. So I don't want to say there's a distinct amount of time we can add or anything like that. Ours was more taking the delays that would be incurred to go through the circle and implementing them in the projections. In terms of forecasting and things like that.
Like number of cars that we would add,
Yeah, I think it would, probably the parents would be the bigger impact than the buses on that. And a lot of that, like I said, a lot of these times that we're looking at are not the peaks that we observed. So while we're saying these delays that we saw when we went out there and did the runs and we collected this data, a lot of these times would be sort of off-peak. A lot of times we've seen also that typically parents driving students to school, it's sort of something where they're also probably going to work or something, not just going there and heading straight back. So it might be something where they encounter that circle. So it'd be really hard to project that without knowing, are they going specifically just to the school? Would they have gone through there anyway for work? The time period, once again, our impacts are sort of at a slightly off-peak, especially with these elementary and middle schools, where the peak times we saw would have been they'd already be at school or really close to the school if it was a middle school potentially. So while there might be some impact, it's typically what we've seen in the AM hours that we counted and the PM, because it's not your typical 4 to 6. It would be sort of off-peak, so I'm not sure it would have as significant an impact.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Does Pinehurst number 6 go through the traffic circle now, John?
It's a continuous right when they go through the circle now. And I think our bus may actually, I'd have to go confirm this, but I think our bus may actually go across through Village Acre to pick up some more students and then come out on 211.
I was just curious on the time difference that would be versus going through the traffic circle the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's one of the benefits of right now the service to West Pine is that continuous right turn that you have coming down in the circle instead of queuing up to enter the circle.
And once again, kind of to give an idea, instead of flipping back there, I'll see, just check out my data for that one. That one, that's around 7:30 to 8 for the roundabout was where we saw the worst of the worst out there. That southbound approach was heavy. We had 234 seconds of when they started hitting the queuing until they got through there. Typically with these elementary and middle schools, it is earlier. With the middle school, I can't remember let's see. I think it's the 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Okay. So once again, they might be hitting that 7:30 to 8 range for the middle school there. So that could be during some of the heavier traffic times.
One of the interesting elements of this, and this is something that Josh and I, along with his associate Nate, Ramey Kemp, discussed. When you come down 15501 in this case, it's very open and free flowing between the circle and your first experience of a traffic light in front of Pinecrest High School and then Morganton. After that, it's a 6-minute measurement, and you're right down to Johnson Street. When you head out to 11, there's a series of traffic lights, and I've never been successful to get through green lights in my experience. But aside from that, there is a lot of congestion during this time at the school in 211. So at Archie Drive in 211 to get to the school, there's a lot of congestion that happens there and impacts the times. Because when you would look at that, you would think that, as you were alluding to, Ms. Caldwell, coming out from there seems pretty simple. But at this time of the day when that's occurring, that the congestions that occurred, just those little stops along the way and then over at Archie getting there versus the flow and pattern of that flow coming south on 1551 were very interesting, how comparable it made it.
John, can you remind me what time the buses drop in the morning? What's the latest one that wants to be at school in terms of allowing students to be there in time for breakfast? What is the window? Is it a 30-minute before school starts?
It's not necessarily 30 minutes.
25?
I think it's about 20 minutes is as tight as we like to get it, 20 to 15 minutes so the student can get something to eat, consume it, and then get to their destination before
Okay.
instruction starts.
So is it fair to say that they would be at school if they're riding the bus by 7:35, 7:40 for the middle schools? And about
believe that.
7:05?
I'd have to pull up a chart that we've developed that shows all
Yeah,
that.
we saw it just a couple of months ago, yeah, or last month. Okay,
With the bell schedule and all the times
Mm-hmm.
on there. I'd have to confirm that with that chart.
thank you.
All right, so with this one, with the 42 and 43 minutes, once again, looking at the averages that we got for middle schools and for the area they're in, they're clearly well below your average of 1 hour and 9 minutes for the area, and then for the middle schools, the hour and 16 minutes. Next area we've got there is the Pinehurst Lake community. And what we looked here at, once again, is Southern Middle School and West Pine Middle School. Once again, these are very comparable, an hour and 16 minutes and projected to be approximately an hour and 16 minutes. These ones are slightly higher than the averages averages being an hour and 9 minutes. And then for the area and for middle schools, it's right on. So this is about as average as you can get. It's an hour and 16 minutes for middle schools is the average time based on existing bus ridership. Any questions with this one?
Now, again, you're seeing an update on what has gotten us to this point so far. Planning Committee is going to continue to work with the consultants we have engaged with at Ramey Camp and Associates as well as Numrix on continuing to refine and develop the presentation and the recommendation Dr. Grimacy will present at the work session on September 3rd. I want to also point out that there has been, since the development of the out-of-capacity chart and the future growth, there have been some developments for residential homes that have recently been approved that were not contained in the original report done by ORED. Example of that is Blake Village, located off of NC5. And so that, along with the Martin property, which is adjacent to the current Aberdeen construction site, that property, those were not contained in the ORED projections. Numrix is updating that now, and so the presentation on September 3rd will include that in an updated capacity chart. So we are being mindful still of development as it changes and continues around the district to make sure, to the best of our ability, we can account for it in what we're evaluating. So again, I want to also note that September 12th at 6 p.m. there will be a public hearing on the proposed plan. Where the public has an opportunity to provide feedback to the board on the plan that's being proposed in September 3rd. We are now open for discussion and questions.
John, I have comments on travel time. The public really needs to understand that we have a large percentage of students that do not ride the bus. And I can guarantee you, no matter how efficient we get in the routes, if we have fewer students, the travel time is going to be more. If we have more students, it's going to be less. And you say, well, why don't you get more buses? Well, several years ago, we made a decision to change the bus schedule because we need to save $400,000, and that need has not gone away. We still continue to need to save that because the funding we're getting from the state for everything else is averaging a little less than one, excluding employee salaries and wages, is averaging a little more, less than 1% a year increase over the last 8 years. Thanks.
Any other questions or feedback from board members?
This is really helpful. I know the biggest questions people had was about transportation and about the bus routes, and it's good to see some of this data come out. Obviously, there's a lot for us to look at, so thank you for sharing that today and for giving us that look at what the data is starting to show.
Any other questions? All right, Madam Chair, with your permission.
Yes.
We'll now move into the pending action and discussion items. And let's see, to begin with, we've got Dr. Kim Bullard. I believe this is first presentation as our Director of Exceptional Children's Services. Welcome, Dr. Bullard.
And she's going to be here a while.
Yes.
Got a few.
Yes, she does. But fortunately, they're annual renewals, and she's not spending any more money, so I don't anticipate she's going to get a lot of pushback. Kim, all yours.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, and Dr. Grimacy. I am requesting approval on 4 contracts related to services that are needed for the Exceptional Children's Department. These are contracts that we have had previously and we are renewing for the upcoming school year. All contracts being presented for approval have not had an increase in cost from last school year. The first of these contracts being presented for your approval is with John E. Sexton and Associates. The contract with John E. Sexton and Associates provides services for Moore County School students who need audiological services. The cost of the services will be billed at $505 per day and will be rendered 3 days each week. There will also be the cost of mileage reimbursement at the approved federal rate. The second contract being presented for your approval is with Sandhills Children's Center. The contract with Sandhills Children's Center provides services to our students who meet the criteria for services that need to be provided in a developmental day center. The funds are made available through the State Board of Education to assist in providing special education services to students with disabilities in which the local LEA has placed them in a developmental day center. The state reimbursement rate and agreed upon cost is $999.10 per child per month, or the developmental day program rate issued by the Department of Public Instruction for the 1920 school year, and shall be paid in 10 monthly payments. An allotment of $50 shall be paid per child per month for education supplies and materials. Children entering the center after September 15, 2019 will receive prorated funding. The contract will serve no more than 35 students ages 3 through 5. The third contract for your approval is with Maxim Healthcare. Maxim Healthcare Services provides services to our students who need individual nursing service as prescribed by each student's individualized education plan. The cost of these services will be billed at $37 an hour, not to exceed 7.5 hours per day for each nurse required. The final contract being presented for your approval is with All-American Interpreters for the Deaf. The contract with All-American Interpreters for the Deaf provides services to our students who need sign language interpreting services. The cost of the services will be billed at $45 an hour unless requested with less than a 24-hour notice, and then the billing rate will be $67.50 an hour. There will also be the cost of mileage reimbursement at the approved federal rate. Currently, these services are required for 2 students as identified by their individualized education plan. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, that was a different approach than what we've had before, but I was really liking it.
I like
I got the sense you were liking it, so I just let her roll. You want me to have her do the next few?
Yeah, I do.
The only
Kim,
question,
normally we stop at the end of each one and we ask if there's any
don't
questions,
do
but
that.
you were
I
doing
would
a
like-
great
yeah.
job. No, yeah, we can change that
We like
anytime.
your
but
way.
Anyhow, board members, this is your opportunity on any one of these 4 annual renewals that we have. Please direct any questions you have to Dr. Bullard.
Thank you for providing the number of students that these are serving. That helps with looking at the cost factors.
and it appears from the summary that the services are actually provided to where the students are in the location at the schools versus the students having to go someplace. And I think that's great.
The only question I have is the developmental day cost, the amount that we reimburse, it doesn't appear that it's changed much over the years.
Yeah, ma'am.
Is it a true representation of what the cost is?
That would be something I would have to find out.
Okay, I just hope it's enough to support those kids, but yes, I know that that's all mandated, so there's nothing we can do about that, but thank you.
At a previous meeting, I made some comments about the number of exceptional children we continue to grow within the system. I am sure there are people that don't realize what kind of services are actually provided, like nursing services and the auditory services and whatnot, and how specialized they all have to be.
And I'm very proud of the fact that this $120,000 provides for the health needs of 2 students. I'm proud of that. I don't want anybody to read me wrong, but I think that it is eye-opening to some members of the public and some elected officials that this is just the health needs of these children. This isn't just their educational needs.
Exactly.
And so this is just 2 of our children, and thank God we're doing what we're doing. I mean, these are good services that we provide, they're worthwhile, but I think it's the reality of the true cost of educating and our commitment to our exceptional children. Anybody else? Any questions for Dr. Bullard? Well done, Ken.
Thank
Very
you.
well done.
You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah. They like you.
Yeah.
Very good. Mr. Cox. I had to get caught up with Dr. Bullard there. She'd gotten ahead of me on my agenda here.
Thank you,
Item 3E.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy, Madam Chair, other members of the board. This is the final budget resolution for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2019. I won't go through each item on here or each PRC on here, but I will touch each fund. The majority of changes within each fund are related to fiscal year-end cleanup, where we're moving around dollars to make sure we maximize the state and federal dollars that will revert back if we don't spend them. So we're doing a lot of shifting around related to that. So for state funds, our total budget ending June 30, 2019 was $78,420,448, which was an increase of $271,523 over the third quarter. And like I said, I'll be happy to answer any questions related to any of the specific moves in there if you have them.
I think the word is transfers. Is it transfer? Is transfer?
There's
appropriate?
transfers.
Our commissioners don't like the word shift.
Okay. all
I
right.
promised a few of them, we wouldn't use the word
I'll
shift.
take notice of that. Make sure to emphasize transfers.
I appreciate you breaking it down though, because it's visually, it's good to see.
And some of these transfers have to do with the actual number of students that were utilizing those services.
Right, so we may have budgeted at one point for a certain number, we got more in and then had to transfer to cover those additional expenditures, or got more money in from the state, in this case, to cover
those
additional-
students.
Right.
Yeah, right, okay. Because I see that with the EC students and the CTE, and it,
Right. So in the local fund, which we refer to as Fund 2, final budget of $31,028,900, which is an increase of $435,400. We did increase or utilize $200,000 additional of fund balance to cover those expenditures. Auditors are here now. We'll know what our final fund balance is. We don't anticipate utilizing the full $200,000, but we did it just to make sure we were covered once the auditors come in and go through everything. So we should have a fund balance at year end after the auditors finish all their work of just over $2 million. Still over $2 million. Sorry.
Which is close, because 2 million is the cutoff.
Correct, yes.
Cash fund balance that we need for federal reimbursements, management, cash flow
While we
management,
wait
of federal
for the-
reimbursements,
yeah,
that's
federal
right. So,
dollars
so if we're close to 2 million, that means that we've come pretty close to, depending on what we're allowed to
Right.
depend on. In other words, no surplus.
Correct.
Little or
yes.
no surplus.
Correct. The third fund, federal funds, which we refer to as Fund 3, $8,243,311,000, an increase of $73,757 over the third quarter there. Local capital funds, $4,108,689, an increase of $1.4 million there. That increase is solely around replacement school buses that the state funds that we have to show in our general ledger. No change to school nutrition funds, $5,485,000. And in local current operations, which is what we refer to as Fund 8, final budget of $3,608,831, which was an increase of $346,734 over the third quarter. The main thing I want to point out there, you've heard us talk a lot about bridge funding, the 5 nurses, I believe it's 5 nurses, a psychologist and counselor that we've went to the county to ask for. We've been funding out of Medicaid, saying that money will run out. We have a fund balance of approximately $700,000 of that Medicaid funding, which covers $600,000 appropriately, or approximately $600,000 for that staff. So we will be out at the end of this year without some additional funding for that, or having to do something with those positions. So a total budget for the year ending June 30th, 2019 is $130,700,803, and that is an increase of $2.3 million over the third quarter. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, for item F, in Mr. Barath's absence, I'll go ahead and proceed. During your July 8th, 2019 regular business meeting, you approved a deed of dedication for water and sewer service to the temporary Pinehurst Elementary School. Execution of the deed of dedication now requires transfer of the water and sewer services to Moore County Public Utilities. The attached release and waiver conveys the improvements to the public utility and acknowledges that all improvements remain in the warranty of 1 year and that there are not any claims or liens filed against Moore County Schools for the work performed. The document has been reviewed by the board attorney and is recommended to me by Mr. Barath that it be approved. Essentially, what we've done is we got the deed of dedication approved. Now we have to transfer the utilities themselves over to the county. It's a routine action, and it will come with the recommendation of my approval. If you have any questions, we can bring them up to John later on, but I also was wondering what this was all about, and so fortunately, it is one that I can talk a little bit about, but offer it for your consideration.
Are there any questions from board members?
We're done, John.
No? All right, thank you very much.
And now, the staff would appreciate the board's direction on any of these items that you would prefer to assign to your consent agenda for next week, or those that you would prefer to place on board action.
All consent?
That's
All
what I have.
consent.
Yeah, so we're looking at 3A through F.
Correct.
All of those for consent.
Yes.
Any questions? Ms. Potter, you got that? All right,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
And with your permission,
Yes.
proceed to board action. At this time, I'll invite Dr. Alpenfels to come forward, and I'll turn it over to her and Dr. Brown. This would be the second reading of new and revised policies that were introduced to the board on July 8th. Dr. Brown.
We've deleted some of the policies because they are redundant and already expressed or written in other policies. And we also have updated the policies to meet with the North Carolina School Board Association's policies so that there's parallel there. So I move forward to have these recommended to be accepted, unless there are questions.
You
Make a motion.
Yes.
I second.
So a motion is on the table with Mr. Dennison. There's a second with Ms. Carter. Any discussion? All those in favor to approve the policies, say aye.
Aye.
It's been a long day.
Dr. Abbenfields, we try and keep this short and sweet.
Any opposed? No, motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, item 4B is one that the board is managing, and the clerk and I are very willing to assist in any way we can, but otherwise, it's up for, I defer to your leadership.
Thank you,
Thanks.
and thank you for passing that off. I'd like to talk about a topic that I know is difficult for us. At our last board meeting, we announced, and the whole community knew that Bruce Cunningham had passed away. And at that time, we were not ready. It was just a few days after his passing. We were not ready as a board to address what that meant for us as a board. It does mean that we have an opening, and recall about a year ago, just over a year ago, when Mr. Lambert died, we had the same conversation. And at that time, it was very close to the election that was coming up in 2018. And we decided to wait for the voters to decide at that point. Today, we find ourselves in a little bit of a different situation. We are approximately 18 months out for the next election, and Mr. Cunningham's term expires at our first meeting in December of 2020. So we're a long time out. And Ms. Carter and I have conferred with our board attorney, and he has advised us that the board should appoint someone to fill the vacancy unless there are any major concerns. And I guess unless there are any major concerns, I'd like to use this work session to solidify what our process would be to actually fill that appointment. And then just to be sure that you all understand that the appointment that we would make would be up until the December 2020 board meeting, where we would swear in a new board member that is elected in the November 2020 election. So the person that is appointed would be appointed through that time. One thing about process that Ms. Carter and I talked about with our board attorney is that there really is none stipulated by statute. We could use today to appoint someone. Somebody could put a nomination on the floor and we could appoint someone. That's one end of the process. At the other end of the process, we could take months and committees and all that type of thing. So there's a wide variety. If we look back at our history, we have done it before, and that might be something we want to consider, is the process that we've used in the past. One point of clarification, too, is that we are looking for someone in District 5. So it would have to be the district that Mr. Cunningham was in, and that term is the term that is the unexpired term that we have to fill. So, Ms. Carter, I know that we've had some conversations with our attorney, and did you want to talk a little bit about a suggestion that we could provide?
Certainly. In talking and reviewing the things that were done during the last tense of appointment, the board solicited applications from interested citizens, those who were willing to serve an incomplete term, and entertained written applications consisting of a resume and the answer to several questions, such as what issues they saw ahead of the board or what they thought they might bring to the board. These were narrowed down to those that fit into the districts necessary, and the board had the opportunity to go through these applications and filter through to find the ones that met the needs of the board at the time. And it would seem to me that the same sort of process might be used as we approach this one. We know that our options are a little more limited this time because it is a District 5 seat. And so we will need to ensure that anyone who applies meets the requirements of being from that school district. I would like to see us move quickly because I think we have some very major decisions ahead, decisions that will affect those who live in the Southern Pines Aberdeen district especially. They're going to get new schools, and of course their school lines are going to be changing, and it would be very, very helpful for us to have a voice from that region sitting with us on the board and able to provide input from the other folks who live within that district. So it would seem good if we could proceed with that on a fairly quick basis and bring someone on board. So I would like to, I guess I could make a motion and move that we proceed to open a portal or an online portal for applications, possibly opening it tomorrow and allowing a 2-week time period in which we would entertain applications. That applications could be submitted both by email to the board chair or by snail mail to the school office here, or by personal drop-off here at the school office, that we ask people to include a resume as well as answer a question or two, such as, what do you see the role of a Board of Education member being, and what might you bring to a position on the Board of Education? And that we allow about 2 weeks, ending the time on August 20th, to then allow time to assess the applications that have come in. Not yet setting a date for the decision in the event that more applications need to be submitted. So I can make that as a motion, or we can just discuss it now and see what other feedback you would like to put into that area.
I think Robert's Rules has us as a motion, because you've
Okay,
made a motion.
Did you get that as a motion? Close. I think Ms. Thompson was about to speak up.
I just wanted to know if I need to second, if I need to make a comment. At this point, since there was a motion initially presented,
Second,
I just want a second then.
Okay, so
Right, then now we can have a
My
discussion.
motion is that we open a period of 2 weeks for the submission of applications to fill the District 5 seat, requiring a resume and letter of intent addressing the questions, what do you see as the role of the Board of Education in Moore County, and what do you see you will bring to the Board of Education? At the end of 2 weeks, the evaluations would then be evaluated. The
Then I would say that
applications.
it's August 6th through the 20th, if
It
we
would
want to be
the dates, yeah,
specific.
Specific dates.
That would be a 2-week period starting tomorrow, is that right?
Mhm.
And it would be addressed to me, either by email or by snail mail or by hand delivery. There wouldn't be an online portal or anything. It would
That's
just
true.
be an
That's the
email
right
to
term.
me, yeah.
Madam Chairman, with permission?
Yeah.
Just checking to make sure that we're capable of putting a portal up technically.
We just
We're not
said we
gonna
don't
do a
want a
portal.
portal.
We don't
It'd be
want a
by
portal.
email.
By email. I would just clarify that. It would be email to me or drop off here or mail here to address to me. Is there any discussion about that process? Any
I just want
questions?
to give you some history on what happened when our friend was released there by the old school board. That happened on the 4th. We had 3 members resign on the 6th. We had 1 resign on the 9th. And we appointed Pam on June the 11th, June the 7th and 8th. We appointed Pam on June the 11th. We appointed Helena on June the 17th, and Stacy and Libby on July the 13th. So it all happened
Very quick.
within,
Fairly quickly.
just for information.
And you did not do an application. You were just appointed, is
She
that
was
right?
appointed.
I actually had a conversation with Bruce following the community forum at Union Pines. And Bruce and I connected, and I sent a note to let him know that I would be available and willing to assist if the board needed me.
And
And
I
that was
think
an at-large position.
That was an
At-large
at-large position at
position,
that
right.
time.
There was flexibility.
Yeah.
So, so what happened was, is just as you said, it was an off time to where I had to reapply and go through that process, but it was 2015 through the following 2016 year to apply.
Right.
And we did the same thing as it indicated. Once I was sworn in, we got a notebook full of applications of, say, 60, 75 that we looked through, and we narrowed down and selected potential candidates. And then we selected and brought a nomination forward to the board to vote on.
So there is a motion and a second on the table.
I'd like to make one other point too. As Pam said, at this point, there were only 3, Charles and Bruce and myself. So Bruce and I talked, and then we talked, and what we talked about, then I talked with Charles about, so that all 3 of us knew what was going on before any appointments were made, just for information. but all individually, though
of
not
note-
as a group.
Of note, I've also spoken with the Board of Elections, and because there could be some confusion about residency requirements, they stand by ready to answer questions for anyone who is interested. They will make sure that they live in District 5 and would meet the criteria. So it would take as a quick call to the Board of Elections, and they will
Or
know.
if they don't, what I did is I just took all of them down there, the Board of Elections, and they told me which ones were in, which ones were out.
Any further questions or discussion?
Nope.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Because it's a 2-week turnaround, it would be helpful that this information get out. We have something for you. We can draft something for you before we leave today, Ms. Murphy, to put up on the Facebook page. Make sure that we get that out, and obviously
ballot.
reach out to those that might be interested that live in that area. So, board comments is the last item on the agenda. Is that correct? Yes, it is. Ms. Thompson, or who wants to go? You said you want to go first?
I have a piece of information that I'd like to share. In July, we had several speakers address the board concerning the Moore County Schools grades. As they were giving information, I didn't think that all was said was correct. So I decided to research this information, and my source is the NCDPI Department of Public Instruction website, as well as information received from the Communications Department and the accountability offices. First, let me address the grades for Moore County and our surrounding counties. I reviewed 8 counties that touch Moore County and 1 county where a number of our residents work. Chatham County has no A-grade schools. Cumberland has 5. Harnett has none. Hoke has none. Lee County has 1. Moore County has none. Randolph County has 1. Richmond County has 1. And Scotland County has 1. What was not said is that all of the A schools, with the exception of 2, are specialty schools. They're early college programs or ones that require specialized types of magnet areas. They're categorized as with applications and for those students who are specifically selected. So the ones with A grades, with the exception of the 2 schools, both of them in Cumberland County, 1 an elementary school and 1 a high school. Currently, 72% of the early college programs in the state outperform the schools in their districts. In reviewing the information about Moore County from 2016 to 2018, 3 of the 23 schools were not graded: Aberdeen Primary, Southern Pines Primary, and the Community Learning Center at Pinckney. 75% or 15 of the schools stayed the same during these 3 years period. 15% or 3 of the schools came up a letter grade. 5% or 1 of the schools went down a letter grade. And 5% or 1 school went up 1 year and then down the next. In 2016, Moore County Schools had only 2 schools where the growth was exceeded. 15 schools that met growth and 3 schools that did not meet growth. In 2017, Moore County had 5 schools that exceeded growth, 11 schools that met growth, and 4 schools that did not meet growth. In 2018, Moore County Schools had 8 schools that exceeded growth, 8 schools that met growth, and 4 that did not meet growth. Interestingly, there is no consistency as to which schools exceeded, met, or did not meet, which any good educator means that each year with different students, we get different results. I have a chart that I'll pass on to Ms. Sonia so that she can put this up on the minutes to show which schools are over the 3-year period. And I chose 2016 to 2018 because that's when I came on the board. What I have seen as I charted the schools is that in 2016, we only had 2 schools that growth was exceeded. And in 2018, we now have 8 schools where growth is exceeded. Over the 3-year period, Moore County Schools averaged 16.33 out of 20 schools tested that either stayed the same or came up in their grades. Do we have room to grow? Yes. And improve? Yes. but we have plans, and I'll refer people to the individual school improvement plans, which are working. To know that we have this and that we have the 8 schools that are now exceeding growth, that's 400% growth, folks. I mean, I don't know much anyplace else that has that kind of growth, which means that something good is happening and something positive is happening in our schools. Moore County is making progress with dedicated teachers, competent administrators, and caring parents. And with this continued support, we will carry on making the positive growth that we have. Thank you.
No comments here.
I don't have anything.
I actually do, and I don't mean to be Debbie Downer, but I wasn't here last time when you all said comments about Bruce, and I was wondering if it was okay if I said something to him?
You may, and also next week at our session, we'll also do a remembrance for him, just so you know that.
Oh, wonderful.
But you're free to do it now.
Okay, thank you. I have served on the Board of Education with Bruce since 2015. When I was appointed, Bruce quickly took me under his wing, and I'm so grateful that he did. He saw something in me that I, at the time, didn't see in myself. I often seeked Bruce's guidance and advice. He always had this way of, of just listening to me, making me feel that my voice matters. Thank you. Bruce always had this way of giving me advice and making me see the whole picture in situations without even saying a word to me. To say Bruce was a huge advocate for our schools is an understatement. He spent countless hours thinking of ways to improve our community and our schools. One memory that sticks in my head was when he called me up on Sunday to tell me he was driving around all week to look at the traffic patterns for our bus routes. Another time he told me he was up at 4 a.m. thinking about our redistricting plan. Yes, these are behind the scenes of what a board member goes through, but with Bruce's outside of the box thinking, I'm sure Ann can agree he had many sleepless nights. Bruce had visions that he shared with me before he left for Ireland. He was so excited about his trip and for the upcoming months ahead. He told me he would drive by McDeeds Creek and just sit in the parking lot in awe. He was looking forward to the ribbon cutting on that school, and Bruce was beyond proud of the new schools being built, especially one in Southern Pines. I know I will honor the friendship and guidance he gave me every day. I'm grateful and honored to have known Bruce. Bruce was an exceptional board member, a lawyer, and most of all, a friend to me. He definitely made his mark on this community and our hearts. I'm sorry I got emotional at the end. That's it.
Thank you, that was beautiful.
Sorry.
No, and it's important to remember all that he has done for us and for this community, and it'll be remembered. I remember doing our tour at McDeeds Creek the other day, you said, Bruce and I helped pick those colors on the floor.
We sure did.
So every time,
We sure
every
did.
time you see that pattern of terrazzo, I can't remember where exactly we were standing,
Yeah.
but we'll think of him.
Yeah,
He's
we
with
sure
us.
did.
He really is. He really is. And thinking about that, I would hope, and we didn't say this with the resumes, but I hope people put their unpaid positions as well as their paid positions. Because sometimes some of the meaningful work that we do is in a volunteer capacity and what we give of ourselves, just as Bruce did for 40 years here in Moore County. So I hope that is something that we all consider. Anything else, Ms. Carter?
Sorry.
No, I got emotional for Stacy.
I didn't mean to. I wasn't planning on it.
And at our next board meeting on Monday, we will have a plaque that we present to the family. And so it'll be our opportunity as a board to honor him and remember him as well. So that'll be next Monday.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Yes.
I move the meeting be adjourned.
And I second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.